The night Grant Matthews hired a woman to pretend to be his girlfriend, he never imagined his 6-year-old daughter would beg her to stay forever. What started as a desperate solution to avoid pitying stares at a corporate gala became the moment that shattered 3 years of carefully constructed walls. A widowed CEO, a hired companion, a grieving child who hadn't smiled in years, and one evening that would crack open a heart he thought was permanently closed. Stay with me until the end of this story and comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Grant Matthews' penthouse office, like accusations he couldn't escape. He stood motionless, staring at the Seattle skyline dissolving into gray mist, his reflection ghostly in the glass. Behind him, his assistant's voice floated through the speakerphone with carefully measured professionalism. Mr. Matthews, the foundation has confirmed your attendance for the gala. They've noted on the seating chart that you'll have a +1 this year. Grant's jaw tightened. I never said I was bringing anyone, Monica. There was a pause, the kind that spoke volumes. Sir, they assumed. It's been 3 years since Mrs. Matthews passed. The board members have been asking questions. Asking questions. The phrase twisted in his gut like a blade. He knew exactly what that meant. Concerned colleagues wondering if he was ready to move on. Whispered conversations at charity events about how tragic it all was. The widow CEO still grieving, still alone, still trapped in amber, while the world spun forward without him. He turned from the window, his face carved from stone. At 38, Grant Matthews looked like a man who'd aged a decade in 3 years. The sharp angles of his face had hardened, his dark hair showed premature silver at the temples, and his gray eyes, once warm with laughter, now held a distance that kept the world at arm's length. Thank you, Monica. That'll be all. He ended the call before she could respond, then sank into his leather chair, running both hands through his hair. The Westbrook Foundation Gala, the same event where he'd last appeared with Catherine, her hand warm in his, her laugh lighting up every conversation. She'd worn emerald green that night, and when they danced, she'd whispered in his ear, "These people bore me to tears, but you make it bearable." 4 months later, she was gone. An aneurysm. No warning. No goodbye. Just there one morning making pancakes for Harper, gone by afternoon. Grant's eyes burned, but no tears came. They'd stopped coming somewhere in year 2. His phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Walsh, Harper's nanny, Harper asking when you'll be home. She had a rough day at school, his chest constricted. Harper, his 6-year-old daughter who'd watched her mother disappear and had been trying to understand it ever since. Who still set out 3 plates at breakfast sometimes, forgetting. Who asked questions Grant couldn't answer. Where did Mommy go? When is she coming back? Did I do something wrong? He texted back, on my way, 20 minutes. But as he gathered his things, his mind circled back to the gala. The empty chair beside him, the sympathetic glances, the well-meaning questions. Are you seeing anyone? You know, it might be time. As if grief had an expiration date, as if love could be scheduled like a business meeting. The thought that formed next was desperate, perhaps even insane, but desperation had a way of making the impossible seem reasonable. 2 days later, Grant sat in his home study, laptop open, feeling like a man who'd crossed some invisible line into absurdity. The website glowed on his screen. Elite Companions, professional event services. He'd found it through a discreet recommendation from Marcus Webb, his chief operations officer, during a rare moment of honesty over whiskey. Look, I'm not saying you need to date, Marcus had said carefully, but if you just need someone to stand beside you for one night, to make the vultures stop circling, there are professional services, legitimate ones. They're not what you think. And now here Grant was, scrolling through profiles of women who offered sophisticated companionship for corporate events, galas, and business functions. It felt wrong. It felt deceptive. It felt like exactly what he needed to survive one more gala without drowning in pity. He clicked on a profile almost at random. Elena Brooks, 32. Background in psychology and event management. Specializes in corporate functions and charity galas. Discreet, professional, adaptable. The photo showed a woman with warm hazel eyes, auburn hair pulled back elegantly, and a smile that looked genuine rather than performative. Something about her expression suggested intelligence and kindness in equal measure. Before he could second-guess himself, Grant clicked Request Consultation. The response came within 3 hours. A brief, professionally worded email suggesting a preliminary meeting at a neutral location, a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, to discuss expectations and ensure compatibility. No commitment required. Grant almost backed out 4 times before the meeting. This was insane. He was a respected CEO, a father, a man who'd built a tech empire from nothing. And he was hiring a stranger to pretend to be his girlfriend for one evening. But the thought of facing that gala alone, of seeing the pity in everyone's eyes, of answering the same careful questions about his personal life, drove him forward. The coffee shop was quiet, tucked into a corner building with brick walls and soft lighting. Grant arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee he wouldn't drink, and sat in a booth near the back, feeling like a criminal waiting for a co-conspirator. When Elena Brooks walked in, his first thought was that the photo hadn't done her justice. She moved with quiet confidence, her presence warm, but not overwhelming. She wore a simple charcoal dress with a cream cardigan, professional but not formal, and her auburn hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders. When she spotted him and smiled, it reached her eyes. "Grant Matthews?" She extended her hand as she approached. "Yes." "Elena?" He stood, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm warm. "Thank you for meeting with me." She slid into the booth across from him, setting her purse aside. "I know this kind of arrangement can feel unconventional. I want to start by saying that everything we discuss is completely confidential, and you're under no obligation to proceed." Her directness disarmed him. "I appreciate that." "So." She folded her hands on the table, her expression open and attentive. "Tell me what you need." Grant found himself explaining more than he'd intended. The gala, the empty chair, the 3 years of sympathetic looks. His late wife, Catherine, the pressure from colleagues who thought they were being helpful. "Harper. My daughter is 6, he said quietly, staring at his untouched coffee. "She's been through enough without watching me spiral at public events. I just need one night. One night where I'm not the tragic widower, where people see me as someone who's moved forward, even if I haven't." Elena listened without interrupting, her hazel eyes steady on his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment before speaking. "I understand why you're asking for this," she said carefully, "but I need to be clear about what I do and don't do. I accompany clients to events. I engage in conversation, help navigate social situations, and provide a presence. What I don't do is pretend to be someone I'm not in a way that would hurt others." "I'm not asking you to lie, aren't you?" Her tone was gentle but direct. "You want people to think we're together. That's deception, even if it's by omission." Grant felt heat rise in his face. "You're right. This was a mistake. I'm sorry for wasting your time." He started to stand, but Elena's voice stopped him. "I didn't say no." He looked at her confused. She leaned forward slightly. "I said, I need to be clear about boundaries. If we do this, I won't actively lie if someone asks direct questions. I'll be tactfully vague. I'll stand beside you, I'll be warm and engaging, and I'll help you navigate the evening with grace. But I won't deceive people about the nature of our relationship if directly questioned. Can you work with that?" Grant sat back down slowly. "Why would you agree to this at all?" Elena's expression softened. "Because I've been to 100 of these events, and I've seen what loneliness looks like. I've seen widows and widowers standing alone in crowds, trying to be strong, while the world expects them to perform normalcy. Sometimes people just need someone to stand beside them while they survive the night. There's no shame in that." Something in Grant's chest loosened, just slightly. "The gala is in 10 days. Then we have time to prepare." Elena pulled a small notebook from her purse. "Tell me about the event. Who will be there? What's your relationship with them? What are the likely conversation topics? The more I know, the more effectively I can support you." They talked for 90 minutes. Elena took notes, asked clarifying questions, and demonstrated a sharp intelligence that surprised him. She'd clearly done this before, not just attended events, but studied them. She understood social dynamics, corporate politics, and the unspoken rules of high society gatherings. As they stood to leave, Elena paused. One more question. You mentioned your daughter, Harper. Does she know you're doing this? Grant froze. She's 6. I wasn't planning to. She's used to babysitters when I go to events. But she'll meet me when I arrive to pick you up? Yes. Mrs.
Walsh, her nanny, will be there.
Elena nodded slowly. Children are perceptive, especially children who've experienced loss. If Harper asks who I am, what would you like me to say? The question hit Grant like a punch. He hadn't thought this through, not really. In his desperation to survive the gala, he'd forgotten that Harper would see Elena, would ask questions, would wonder why Daddy was bringing a strange woman to an event. He faltered. I don't know. Elena's expression was kind but serious. Figure it out before the gala. Children deserve honesty, even when the truth is complicated. I won't lie to your daughter, Grant. That's a boundary I won't cross. The next 8 days passed in a blur of preparation and mounting anxiety. Grant briefed Elena via email on the key attendees, board members, major donors, industry colleagues. She responded with thoughtful questions that showed she was taking this seriously. But it was Elena's final email that stayed with him. I've been thinking about Harper. Children who've lost a parent often worry about losing the other one. When you leave for the gala, she might feel anxious. Consider letting Mrs. Walsh reassure her that you'll be home by a specific time and follow through on that promise. Consistency helps build security. Grant stared at the email for a long time. This woman, this stranger he'd hired, had thought more deeply about Harper's emotional needs than some of his own family members had in 3 years. He typed back, "Thank you. I'll do that." Elena's response came minutes later. "You're a good father, Grant. Don't forget that." Something warm and unfamiliar stirred in his chest. He closed his laptop quickly, as if afraid to examine the feeling too closely. But the night of the gala arrived with unseasonable warmth. Grant stood in his bedroom, adjusting his bow tie for the 4th time, his hands unsteady. Through the window, he could see the city lights beginning to glow as dusk settled over Seattle. Downstairs, he heard Harper's bright voice talking to Mrs. Walsh. His daughter was having a good day. She'd painted a picture at school that now hung on the refrigerator, and she'd asked fewer questions about Catherine than usual. Good days were precious. Grant tried not to think about how the bad days still outnumbered them. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Grant descended the stairs slowly, his heart hammering. Mrs. Walsh was already moving toward the door, but Harper got there first, bouncing on her toes with the boundless energy of a 6-year-old. "I'll get it." Harper's small hand reached for the doorknob. "Harper, wait," Grant called, but she'd already pulled the door open. And there was Elena. She wore a midnight blue gown that was elegant without being ostentatious, her auburn hair swept up in a soft updo, her makeup subtle and natural. But what struck Grant wasn't her appearance, it was the way she immediately noticed Harper. Elena's eyes went straight to the little girl, and her entire demeanor shifted. She didn't ignore Harper to greet the adult. She didn't speak over her head to Grant. Instead, she knelt down, actually knelt, in her evening gown, so she was at Harper's eye level. "Hello," Elena said softly, her smile warm and genuine. "You must be Harper." Harper's eyes widened. She glanced back at her father, suddenly shy. "It's okay, sweetheart," Grant managed, his throat tight. Elena waited patiently, not pushing. "My name is Elena. Your dad and I are going to a party tonight. Is that okay with you?" Harper considered this seriously. "What kind of party?" "A fancy one, the kind where adults stand around and talk about boring things." Elena's eyes twinkled. "Honestly, I wish I could stay here and play with you instead. That would be much more fun." A small smile tugged at Harper's lips. "We have cookies. Mrs. Walsh made them." "Lucky you." Elena's expression was genuinely envious. "I bet they're delicious." "You could have one," Harper offered shyly. Grant watched, stunned, as his daughter, who'd barely spoken to strangers since Catherine's death, invited this woman she'd known for 30 seconds to have a cookie. Elena glanced up at Grant, and he saw the question in her eyes. "Is this okay?"
He nodded, not trusting his voice. I would love a cookie, Elena said to Harper, but only if you pick it out for me. You'll know which one is the best. Harper's smile widened. She grabbed Elena's hand, just reached out and took it, as naturally as breathing, and tugged her toward the kitchen. The chocolate ones are really good, but the ones with sprinkles are prettier. Mrs. Walsh caught Grant's eye as Elena and Harper passed.
The older woman's expression was startled, almost shocked. In 3 years, she'd never seen Harper warm to anyone so quickly. Grant followed them to the kitchen in a daze. Harper was already explaining the cookie situation with great seriousness, holding up 2 options for Elena's inspection. This is a very difficult choice, Elena said thoughtfully. They both look perfect. What do you think I should pick? The chocolate one, Harper decided, because it's Daddy's favorite too. Elena took the offered cookie with solemn gratitude. Thank you, Harper. This is definitely the best cookie I'll eat all night. She took a small bite, and her eyes lit up with genuine appreciation. Mrs. Walsh, this is incredible. The nanny smiled, pleased. Thank you, miss. Just Elena is fine. She finished the cookie in a few bites, clearly not just pretending to eat it for show. Harper, your dad and I should probably head out soon, but I want you to know he'll be home tonight, not too late, and Mrs. Walsh will be right here with you the whole time. Harper's smile dimmed slightly. Okay. Elena crouched down again, meeting Harper's eyes. Have you ever worried when your dad goes to parties? The question was so direct, so gently honest, that Harper nodded before she could think to hide it. That makes sense, Elena said quietly. When someone you love leaves, even for a little while, it can feel scary. But here's what I promise. I'm going to make sure your dad has a good time tonight, and then I'm going to make sure he comes home safe, okay? Harper studied her for a long moment, then nodded again. Okay. Good. Elena stood, smoothing her gown. She glanced at Grant. Ready? He couldn't speak. His throat had closed completely, so he just nodded. Harper suddenly rushed forward and wrapped her arms around Grant's legs. Bye, Daddy. He knelt, pulling her into a tight hug. I love you, Harper Bear. I'll be home before you know it. Promise? Promise. She pulled back, then surprised him by turning to Elena. Take care of him. Elena's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. I will, sweetheart. I promise. Walsick. The drive to the gala was mostly silent. Grant gripped the steering wheel of his Tesla, his mind replaying the scene in the kitchen over and over. Finally, he spoke. How did you do that? Elena looked over at him. Do what? Harper hasn't let anyone get close to her in 3 years. She barely talks to her teachers. She hides when my colleagues visit. But you... He shook his head. She held your hand. Elena was quiet for a moment. Children know when adults see them, really see them. I didn't treat Harper like an obstacle or an afterthought. I treated her like a person whose feelings matter. You studied psychology. I have a master's degree in developmental psychology, actually. I worked in child trauma counseling for 5 years before I started doing this. Grant glanced at her sharply. Why did you stop? Her smile was complicated. That's a conversation for another time. For now, let's focus on getting you through tonight. They pulled up to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, where valets waited to take the car. The hotel's grand facade glowed with warm lighting, and well-dressed guests climbed the wide steps to the entrance. Grant's stomach churned. Elena must have sensed his tension because she reached over and briefly squeezed his hand. We've got this. Just remember, we're not lying. We're just strategically vague, and I'm right beside you. Her hand was warm, her grip reassuring. Grant found himself holding on a moment longer than necessary before letting go. They exited the car. Grant came around to offer Elena his arm, and she took it with natural grace. Together, they climbed the steps and entered a world Grant had been dreading for weeks. The ballroom was exactly as he remembered. Soaring ceilings draped in ivory fabric, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across hundreds of guests in evening wear, string quartet playing Vivaldi in the corner. Waitstaff circulated with champagne and canapes. The air hummed with polite laughter and networking conversations. And there, scattered throughout the crowd, were all the people Grant had been avoiding, colleagues who'd watched him stumble through grief, board members who'd questioned his focus, friends who'd tried to help and been gently pushed away. "Breathe," Elena murmured beside him. He did, drawing in a slow breath. Then they stepped into the crowd. The first test came within minutes. Richard Thornton, one of the foundation's primary donors and a man who'd known Catherine well, approached with his wife Eleanor. "Grant!" Richard's handshake was firm, his smile warm, but his eyes assessing. "Good to see you. And this is Elena Brooks," Grant said, his voice steadier than he felt. Elena, Richard, and Eleanor Thornton, major supporters of the foundation. Elena's smile was perfect, warm, confident, appropriate. "It's lovely to meet you both. Grant's told me wonderful things about the foundation's work." "Has he?" Eleanor's gaze was sharp with curiosity. "How long have you two known each other?" The question hung in the air, direct, unavoidable. Elena didn't miss a beat. "We met recently, actually. Grant's been kind enough to introduce me to this world. It's quite impressive." It was truthful, without being revealing. Grant felt a flash of admiration. Richard nodded, but his eyes held questions. "Well, it's good to see you here with someone, Grant. Catherine would have wanted you to be happy." The mention of Catherine's name hit Grant like a physical blow, but Elena's hand tightened slightly on his arm, a wordless reminder that she was there. "Thank you, Richard," Grant managed. They moved on, and Grant exhaled slowly. "You okay?" Elena asked quietly. "Getting there." The evening progressed. Elena was remarkable, engaging without being forward, intelligent without being pretentious, warm without being overfamiliar. She asked questions, listened attentively, and somehow made every conversation feel natural. People responded to her genuinely, drawn in by her authenticity. Grant found himself watching her more than he probably should. The way she laughed at someone's joke, a real laugh, not performative. The way she touched his arm lightly when transitioning between conversations. The way she seemed to sense when he needed a moment to breathe and gracefully extracted them from a group. This wasn't just a professional doing her job. This was someone who genuinely cared about people, who'd turned that care into a skill. During dinner, they were seated at a table with Marcus Webb and several board members. The conversation ranged from foundation initiatives to industry trends to political debates. Elena held her own, contributing thoughtfully without dominating. "You work in psychology?" asked Margaret Chen, the foundation's vice president, after Elena had made an insightful comment about educational programs. "I did, yes. Child developmental psychology, specifically. Fascinating. What drew you to that field?" Elena's smile held shadows. "I wanted to help children who'd experienced trauma find their way back to trust and joy. It's heartbreaking work, but it can also be transformative." "Why did you leave?" Margaret pressed, curiosity genuine. "Sometimes healers need healing too," Elena said quietly. "I reached a point where I needed to step back and find a different way to help people." The answer was honest and vulnerable in a way that shifted the entire table's energy. Margaret nodded with understanding, and the conversation moved on, but Grant couldn't stop thinking about Elena's words. As dessert was served, Grant's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it discreetly. A text from Mrs. Walsh. "Harper woke up crying. Says she's scared you're not coming home. I've tried to calm her, but she's asking for you. I'm so sorry to interrupt." Grant's blood ran cold. He showed the phone to Elena without thinking. Her expression shifted immediately. "Go," she said quietly. "What?" "Go to her. She needs you." "The gala isn't over. People will notice." "Grant." Elena's eyes were fierce and gentle at once. "Your daughter is terrified. Nothing happening here is more important than that. Go to her." He stared at her, torn. The careful facade they'd built tonight. The performance. The whole reason he'd hired her, to avoid seeming weak or unable to handle his life. But Harper was crying. "I'm coming with you," Elena said, already standing. "You don't have to. I promised her I'd take care of you. That includes making sure you take care of her." She was already making subtle apologies to the table, gathering her clutch. Grant stood, his decision made. They slipped out of the ballroom as discreetly as possible, but he still felt eyes following them. Curious, concerned, speculating. Let them speculate. Harper needed him. On.
The drive back was faster than the drive there. Grant white-knuckled the steering wheel, running every red light he legally could, his mind flooded with images of Harper sobbing in her bed. Elena sat quietly beside him, not trying to fill the silence with empty reassurances. Somehow, that helped more than words would have. They pulled into the driveway of Grant's modern craftsman home in record time. The house lights glowed warm against the darkness, and through the upstairs window, Grant could see Harper's bedroom light still on. Mrs. Walsh met them at the door, her face creased with worry and apology. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Matthews. I tried everything." "It's not your fault," Grant said quickly, already heading for the stairs. "Thank you for calling." Elena followed him up the stairs without asking permission. Harper's door was half open, and small, hitching sobs echoed from within. Grant's heart shattered as he entered the room. Harper sat in her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals, her face red and wet with tears, her small body shaking. When she saw him, she launched herself across the bed. "Daddy!" He caught her, pulling her into his arms, cradling her against his chest as she clung to him with desperate strength. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm here." "I thought you weren't coming back," she sobbed into his shoulder. "Like Mommy, she went away and never came back." The words drove through Grant like spikes. He sank onto the edge of her bed, holding his daughter as she cried 3 years of grief into his tuxedo jacket. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered fiercely. "I promise you, Harper, I'm not leaving you, not ever." "But Mommy said that too." God. Oh God, had Catherine said that? Had she promised Harper she'd come back before leaving for work that last morning? Had his daughter been carrying that broken promise for 3 years? Grant had no answer that would fix this, no words that could make it make sense. So he just held her, rocking slightly, letting her cry. He'd forgotten Elena was there until he heard her soft voice from the doorway. "Harper?" The little girl lifted her head, surprised, her eyes red and swollen. Elena had kicked off her heels and knelt on the floor beside Harper's bed, still in her evening gown, her updo beginning to come loose. She looked at Harper with such tenderness that Grant's chest ached. "Can I tell you a story?" Elena asked gently. Harper hiccuped, confused. She looked at her father. "If you'd like to hear it," Grant said, his own voice rough. Harper nodded slowly. Elena settled more comfortably on the floor, her gown pooling around her like water. "Once upon a time," she began, her voice taking on a storyteller's cadence, "there was a brave little girl who lived in a beautiful house with her father. They had a wonderful life together, but the little girl's heart hurt because someone she loved very much had to go away." Harper's eyes widened, her tears slowed, caught by the story. "The little girl didn't understand why the person had to leave," Elena continued, "and sometimes, late at night, she would worry that her father might leave too, because when someone you love disappears, it teaches your heart to be afraid of losing others." Grant watched, transfixed, as Elena wove the story with perfect, heartbreaking accuracy. "But here's what the little girl slowly learned," Elena said softly. "Being afraid didn't mean she was weak. It meant she loved deeply. And her father, who loved her more than anything in the entire world, understood that fear. He would never ever blame her for being scared." Harper's small hand found Grant's and squeezed. "So the little girl and her father made a promise," Elena said. "Every time he had to leave, even just for a little while, he would always come back. And even though sometimes the world felt scary, she could trust that promise, because her father's love was stronger than any fear." The room fell silent. Harper stared at Elena with wide, wondering eyes. "Did the little girl stop being scared?" Harper whispered. Elena's smile was gentle and honest. "Sometimes she still got scared, but she learned that being scared didn't mean something bad would happen. And when she did feel afraid, she could tell her father, and he would hold her, just like he's holding you right now." Harper looked up at Grant, and he nodded, his eyes burning. "I will always come back to you, Harper, always." His daughter studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Some of the tension left her small body. "Can Elena stay until I fall asleep?" Harper asked in a tiny voice. Grant looked at Elena, expecting her to politely decline. This wasn't part of the arrangement.
She'd already gone far beyond what he'd hired her for. But Elena just smiled. Of course I can, sweetheart. They settled into a gentle routine. Grant sat on Harper's bed, his daughter curled against his side. Elena remained on the floor, her presence calm and steady. She told another story, this one lighter, about a fox who learned to trust again after being alone, and Harper's eyes grew heavy. Sing? Harper mumbled, half asleep. Grant's throat closed. Catherine used to sing Harper to sleep, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her. Grant had tried once, after the funeral, and broken down in the middle. He hadn't attempted it since. Harper, I can't. I know one, Elena offered quietly. If that's okay? Harper nodded against Grant's chest. Elena's voice, when she sang, was soft and pure, not professionally trained, but true. She sang Blackbird by the Beatles, the lyrics about broken wings and learning to fly taking on new meaning in Harper's dim bedroom. By the song's end, Harper was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Grant carefully extracted himself from his daughter's grip, laying her back against her pillows and pulling the covers up to her chin. He kissed her forehead, his heart still thundering with residual panic. When he turned, Elena was standing, smoothing down her rumpled gown. She'd aged somehow in the soft lamplight, or perhaps she'd just let her guard down, revealing the weariness beneath the professional polish. They left Harper's room together, moving quietly down the hallway. In the dimness, Grant could see that Mrs. Walsh had left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone home. Call if you need anything, and had made tea before departing. Elena found the tea, poured 2 cups without asking, and carried them to the kitchen island. They sat on adjacent stools in the quiet house, the city lights visible through the windows, the gala forgotten. I'm sorry, Grant said finally. For what? For dragging you into this. This wasn't what you signed up for. Elena turned to face him fully. Grant, your daughter had a breakdown tonight. You responded immediately, put her needs first, and held her through her pain. There's nothing to apologize for. I hired you to attend a gala with me, not to counsel my terrified child, not to sit on her bedroom floor telling stories, not to... His voice cracked. You didn't sign up for this disaster. This isn't a disaster. Elena's voice was fierce. This is a father loving his daughter through her grief. This is what healing looks like, messy and painful and real. Grant shook his head, staring into his tea. I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't. 3 years, and it's not getting better. She's not getting better. I'm failing her. No. Elena's hand covered his on the counter. Warm, steady, real. You're not failing her. You're showing up. Every single day, you're showing up. Do you know how rare that is? It's not enough. It's everything. Elena's eyes held his, refusing to let him look away. Grant, I spent 5 years working with traumatized children. I've seen parents who run, who break, who give up. You haven't done any of those things. You're here. You're present. You're trying. That's not failure. That's the hardest kind of love there is. Something in Grant's chest cracked open, a fissure in the wall he'd built around his grief. I'm so tired, he whispered. I'm so tired of being strong, of pretending I have it together, of waking up every day and putting on the armor and being the CEO and the father and the man who's moved on. I haven't moved on. I'm drowning, and I can't let Harper see it because she needs me to be okay, and I don't know how much longer I can... His voice broke completely, and the tears he'd held back for 2 years finally came. Elena didn't look away. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She just moved closer, her hand still covering his, her presence steady as a lighthouse. You don't have to be strong every second, she said quietly. Not with me. Not right now. So Grant stopped trying. For the first time in 3 years, he let himself break in front of another human being. He cried for Catherine, for the life they'd planned, for Harper's stolen childhood, for his own crushing loneliness, for every moment he'd had to pretend to be fine when he was shattering. Elena stayed. She didn't try to fix him or stop the tears or make it comfortable. She just stayed, a quiet, steadfast presence in the wreckage. When the storm finally passed, Grant felt hollowed out, raw, but somehow lighter. He wiped his face with shaking hands. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. Elena's voice was gentle, but firm. You're allowed to grieve, Grant. They sat in silence for a long time, drinking tea that had gone cold, watching the city lights blur through the windows. Finally, Elena spoke. Can I tell you something? Please. I became a child psychologist because of my sister. Elena's voice was quiet, distant. She died when she was 9, leukemia. I was 14, and I watched my parents try so hard to be strong for her, to pretend everything would be okay. They never let themselves fall apart in front of her, never showed their fear. Grant looked at her, seeing the old pain in her eyes. After she died, they shattered, Elena continued. Completely. And I learned something. All that strength they'd performed, all that forced positivity, it hadn't protected my sister. It had just delayed their grief. I decided then that if I ever worked with families facing loss, I would teach them something different. What? Grant asked softly. That it's okay to be human in front of the people you love. That showing your pain doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. And children especially need to see that grief is normal, that it's okay to hurt. Otherwise, they learn to hide their pain too, and it festers. Grant thought about Harper, about how carefully he'd tried to shield her from his grief, and wondered if he'd been teaching her the wrong lesson all along. I don't know how to do this differently, he admitted. You're already doing it differently, Elena said. You came home tonight. You held your daughter. You let her see that you care more about her than any gala or professional image. That's real. That matters. Grant found himself studying Elena in the dim kitchen light, this woman who'd started the evening as a hired companion and ended it as something he couldn't quite name, something more. Why did you really leave child psychology? He asked. Elena's smile was sad. Because I gave everything I had to other people's pain, and I didn't leave anything for my own healing. I burned out, badly. I had to step back and find a different way to help. And is this it? Being a professional companion? It's part of it. I meet people at vulnerable moments, people who are lonely, grieving, or just trying to survive a difficult evening. Sometimes I'm just a pleasant presence for a few hours. Sometimes, she glanced toward the stairs where Harper slept. Sometimes it's more than that. Grant set down his cup. You went far beyond what I hired you for tonight. I know. I should pay you more. I don't want more money, Grant. Elena's eyes met his. I want to know that Harper's okay, that you're okay. The words hung in the air between them, shifting something fundamental in the space. I don't know if we are, Grant said honestly. But tonight helped. More than you know. Elena stood, gathering her clutch. I should go. It's late, and you should get some rest. Grant walked her to the door, suddenly reluctant to see her leave. At the threshold, Elena paused. Grant, yes? What you're doing, raising Harper alone, building a life from ruins, showing up every day even when it's impossibly hard, that's the bravest thing I've ever seen. Don't forget that. She leaned up and kissed his cheek, brief, warm, entirely chaste, and then she was gone, disappearing into the night in her rumpled evening gown. Grant stood in the doorway long after her car pulled away, his hand touching the place where she'd kissed him, feeling like the earth had shifted beneath his feet. Upstairs, Harper slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, and Grant Matthews, CEO and widowed father, realized with startling clarity that the woman he'd hired to help him survive one evening had somehow, impossibly, reminded him what it felt like to be alive. Grant woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through his bedroom windows and the disorienting sensation of having slept past 6 a.m. for the first time in months. His phone showed 8:47, and for a moment panic seized him. Harper, school, breakfast. But then he heard it. Laughter. His daughter's laughter, bright and clear, drifting up from downstairs. He threw on a shirt and descended the stairs quickly, following the sound to the kitchen. Mrs. Walsh stood at the stove, and Harper sat at the counter with a glass of orange juice, animatedly describing something with her hands. And then Elena told the story about the fox, and it was so good, Mrs. Walsh, and she sang too, and her voice was pretty, and... Harper stopped mid-sentence when she saw Grant. Daddy, you're awake. Good morning, Harper Bear. He He kissed the top of her head, relief flooding through him. After last night's breakdown, he'd half expected to find her withdrawn again, but she seemed lighter somehow, her eyes brighter. Mrs. Walsh turned from the stove with a knowing smile. I'd called the school, told them Harper would be a bit late this morning. Thought you both could use the extra time. Thank you. Grant poured himself coffee, his mind still processing last night. The gala, Harper's tears, Elena's stories. The way he'd broken down in his own kitchen while a woman he'd hired as a stranger held space for his grief. Daddy, can Elena come back? Harper asked suddenly. Grant nearly dropped his mug. What? Can she come visit? I liked her. She was nice. And she promised she'd make sure you came home. And she did. Harper's logic was 6-year-old simple and completely devastating. She was helping Daddy at the party, sweetheart. She has her own life. But maybe she could come for dinner? Harper's eyes were hopeful in a way that made Grant's chest ache. Please? Mrs. Walsh caught Grant's eye over Harper's head, her expression carefully neutral but questioning. Grant knew what she was thinking. In 3 years, Harper had never asked for anyone to visit, never wanted strangers around. The fact that she was asking now, after one evening with Elena, I'll think about it, Grant said, which was neither yes nor no, but bought him time. Harper seemed satisfied with that answer and returned to her breakfast. But the question lingered in Grant's mind all through the morning routine. Getting Harper ready for school, the drive to drop her off, the commute to his office downtown. At his desk, surrounded by the familiar trappings of his carefully controlled professional life, last night felt almost surreal. Had he really left the most important networking event of the year to rush home? Had he really cried in front of Elena? Had she really sat on his daughter's bedroom floor in an evening gown, telling stories until Harper fell asleep? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Good morning. Just wanted to check in and see how Harper is doing today. Elena Grant stared at the message for a long moment. She'd gotten his number from the original consultation forms, he realized. But the fact that she was checking in, that she cared enough to ask. He typed back. She's doing well, better than I expected. Thank you for last night, for everything. The response came quickly. I'm glad she's okay, and you're welcome. Take care of yourself too. There was a pause, then another message. If you ever need to talk about Harper or anything else, I'm here. No charge. Just human to human. Something warm unfurled in Grant's chest. He started to type a response 3 times and deleted it each time. Finally, he settled on, I appreciate that more than you know. He set the phone down and tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting back to hazel eyes and auburn hair and a voice singing Blackbird in the darkness. The next 2 days passed in a strange, suspended state. Grant went through the motions, board meetings, product reviews, conference calls, but he felt oddly disconnected from it all. Colleagues who'd seen him leave the gala early asked careful questions. He deflected with vague answers about a family situation, and most were polite enough not to press. Marcus caught him alone in the executive break room on Wednesday afternoon. So, his COO said casually, pouring coffee. Elena seemed nice. Grant shot him a look. Don't. Don't what? I'm just saying she was impressive, smart, engaging, handled herself well. Marcus paused. Until you both disappeared halfway through dinner. Harper needed me. I figured. Marcus's tone softened. Look, I'm not judging. I'm actually impressed you left. That took guts. Or poor planning. No. Marcus leaned against the counter. That took being a good father. The board can survive without you for one evening. Harper can't. Grant was quiet for a moment. Elena told me the same thing. Smart woman. Marcus studied him. You gonna see her again? It was a one-time arrangement. That's not what I asked. Grant didn't have an answer to that. That evening, as he was reading Harper a bedtime story, not as good as Elena's, but he was trying, his daughter interrupted him mid-sentence. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart? Can I tell you something? Always. Harper twisted the edge of her blanket in her small fingers. Sometimes I get scared at night, that you'll go away like Mommy did. Grant's heart clenched. Harper. But Elena said it's okay to be scared. She said I could tell you when I feel like that.
Harper looked up at him with those wide, trusting eyes.
So I'm telling you, I get scared sometimes.
Grant set the book aside and pulled his daughter into his arms.
Thank you for telling me, Harper Bear. That's very brave.
Elena said being scared means I love a lot.
She's right. Grant's voice was rough. And I want you to know, you can always tell me when you're scared, day or night, okay?
Harper nodded against his chest.
Okay. After she fell asleep, Grant found himself in his study, staring at his phone. Elena's number was still there in his messages. Before he could second-guess himself, he typed, Harper told me tonight that she gets scared, I'll leave her. She said you told her it was okay to talk about it. I don't know how to thank you for that. The response took longer this time, almost 20 minutes. Children need permission to feel their feelings. You're giving her that now. That's everything. Grant stared at the message, then typed, She keeps asking when you're coming back. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally,
what did you tell her?
That I'd think about it. Honestly, Elena, I don't know what the right answer is. She got attached so quickly, and if you came over once and then disappeared again, you're worried it would hurt her. Yes. The response took even longer this time. That's a legitimate concern. But Grant, I'm not going to disappear. If I came to dinner, it wouldn't be a one-time thing. I don't do that to children. Grant read the message 3 times. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you want me to come to dinner, I'd like that. Not as a hired companion, not as a professional arrangement, just as someone who cares about you and Harper. The words on the screen blurred slightly. Grant blinked hard. Why? Because yesterday I sat on your daughter's floor and told her stories, and I haven't stopped thinking about her since. Because you let yourself be vulnerable in front of me, and that kind of trust is rare. Because I think you're both remarkable, and I'd like to get to know you better, if that's something you want too. Grant's hands trembled as he typed, Harper wants pizza nights on Fridays. Would you like to join us this week? I'd love to. The conversation continued, trading practical details, time, dietary restrictions, whether Harper had any allergies. But beneath the logistics, something else hummed. A connection forming, tentative and fragile but real. Friday arrived with the kind of nervous anticipation Grant hadn't felt in years. He left work early, picked up Harper from school, and found her practically vibrating with excitement in the car. Is Elena really coming? For real? Yes, sweetheart, for real. Can we make the pizza together? With lots of cheese? Whatever you want. They stopped at the grocery store for ingredients, Harper insisting on picking out everything herself. She chose 3 types of cheese, pepperoni, bell peppers, and a container of rainbow sprinkles in case Elena wants dessert. At home, Grant changed out of his suit while Harper set the table with painstaking care, arranging napkins and placing a flower from the garden in a small vase as a centerpiece. Mrs. Walsh had the day off, so it was just the 2 of them preparing, and Grant found himself grateful for that. This felt private, intimate, a tentative step towards something he didn't quite have words for. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Harper bolted for the door, Grant following more slowly. When she pulled it open, Elena stood there in jeans and a soft green sweater, holding a small gift bag, looking nothing like the elegant woman in the evening gown and everything like someone who belonged here. Elena! Harper threw her arms around Elena's waist without hesitation. Elena laughed, returning the hug with obvious warmth. Hi, sweetheart. I missed you. I missed you, too. Come see what we're making. Grant watched as his daughter grabbed Elena's hand and tugged her inside, chattering about pizza toppings and the flower centerpiece. Elena caught his eye over Harper's head and smiled. Not the professional smile from the gala, but something softer, more genuine. Hi, she said. Hi. Grant's voice came out rougher than intended. Welcome. In the kitchen, Harper took over completely, directing Elena where to stand, explaining the pizza-making process with the seriousness of a culinary expert. Elena listened attentively, asked questions, and rolled up her sleeves to help knead dough. Grant found himself relegated to sous chef, chopping vegetables while the 2 of them worked together with an ease that seemed impossible for people who'd only met once. But Harper had always been intuitive about people, and whatever she sensed in Elena,
It made her bloom. "Did you know," Harper announced, stretching dough with concentrated effort, "that Daddy doesn't like olives? Mommy used to put them on her side of the pizza, but now we don't get them anymore." The casual mention of Catherine made Grant freeze mid-chop. Harper rarely talked about her mother directly, and when she did, Grant usually tried to gently redirect to avoid tears. But Elena just nodded thoughtfully. "What did you think about olives?" "I never tried them. Mommy said I could when I was bigger." Harper's voice was matter-of-fact. "But now she's gone, so I don't know if I like them or not." Grant's throat closed. He set down the knife carefully. Elena glanced at him, then back to Harper. "Would you like to try them now?" Harper considered this seriously. "Maybe, but what if I don't like them?" "Then you don't have to eat them, but at least you'll know." Elena's tone was light, easy. Sometimes trying new things is the only way to figure out what we think about them.
Harper nodded slowly. "Okay, we can get olives next time." Just like that, the moment passed. Harper moved on to arranging pepperoni in a smiley face pattern, and the tension in Grant's shoulders eased slightly. Elena caught his eye and offered a small smile that said, "It's okay, she's okay." They assembled the pizzas together, one with everything, one plain cheese for Harper's more cautious tastes. As they slid them into the oven, Harper announced she needed to show Elena her room. "If that's okay?" Elena looked to Grant. "Of course." He watched them disappear upstairs, Harper's voice echoing down as she narrated a tour of her domain. Grant set a timer for the pizzas and leaned against the counter, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't what he'd planned. He'd hired Elena for one evening, a simple transaction, but she was upstairs in his home, looking at his daughter's drawings, and it felt right in a way that terrified him. 20 minutes later, they returned, Harper clutching a stuffed rabbit. "This is Mr. Hopscotch," she informed Elena seriously. "He was Mommy's when she was little. Daddy gave him to me after... Elena knelt down to inspect the well-loved toy with appropriate reverence. "He's wonderful, Harper. Your mommy must have loved him very much." "She did. And now I do." Harper hugged the rabbit. "Daddy says it's like Mommy's still hugging me when I hold him." Grant felt his eyes burn. He'd told her that during one of the worst nights, when Harper had been crying for her mother and he'd had no other comfort to offer. Elena looked up at Grant with such understanding in her expression that he had to turn away before he lost his composure. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. They ate pizza at the kitchen table while Harper told elaborate stories about her school day, performed a dance routine she'd learned in gym class, and asked Elena approximately 50 questions ranging from, "What's your favorite color?" to, "Have you ever seen a real elephant?" Elena answered every question with genuine interest, never condescending, never dismissive. She laughed at Harper's jokes, admired her drawings, and somehow made the meal feel like the most natural thing in the world. After dinner, Harper insisted they play the card game she'd learned from Mrs. Walsh. Grant protested that Elena probably had other plans, but Elena just smiled and settled onto the living room floor without hesitation. They played for an hour, Harper making up rules as she went, Elena adapting without complaint. At one point, Grant caught himself just watching them, the way Elena's eyes crinkled when she laughed, the way Harper leaned into her naturally, the way this stranger had become less strange with every passing moment. When Harper's yawns became too frequent to ignore, Grant announced bedtime. Harper protested half-heartedly, then surprised him by asking, "Can Elena read me a story?" Grant looked at Elena, giving her an out. "You don't have to." "I'd love to," Elena said simply. Upstairs, Harper changed into pajamas and brushed her teeth with record speed. In her bedroom, she selected 3 books from her shelf and presented them to Elena for approval. "This one," Elena said, choosing a story about a bear who learned to be brave. "It looks perfect." Harper climbed into bed, Mr. Hopscotch tucked under one arm. Grant sat on the edge of the mattress while Elena settled into the reading chair, the same chair Catherine had used, and began to read. Her voice was warm and expressive, bringing the characters to life without overdoing it. Harper's eyes grew heavy, but she fought sleep, clearly not wanting the evening to end. When the story finished, Elena set the book aside. "Good night, sweetheart." "Will you come back?" Harper asked, her voice small and vulnerable in the dim room. Elena glanced at Grant, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly. If your dad says it's okay, I'd like to come back very much. Daddy! Harper looked at him with pleading eyes. Grant smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Elena can come back, Harper Bear. Promise? Promise. Harper smiled, satisfied, and her eyes finally closed. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. Grant and Elena left the room quietly, pulling the door halfway shut. In the hallway, under the soft glow of the nightlight, they stood close enough that Grant could smell Elena's perfume, something subtle and warm. Thank you, he whispered. Again. You keep thanking me. You don't have to. I do, though. You didn't have to come tonight. You didn't have to spend your Friday evening playing made-up card games and reading bedtime stories. Elena turned to face him fully. Grant, I wanted to be here. Don't you understand that? He searched her face, looking for signs of obligation or pity, but all he saw was sincerity. Downstairs, they gravitated to the back porch, a space Grant had barely used since Catherine died. The night air was cool but not cold, carrying the scent of the garden and distant salt water from the sound. They sat in the outdoor chairs, a respectful distance apart, watching moths flutter around the porch light. She's remarkable, Elena said quietly. Harper. She's been through so much, but there's still so much light in her. Catherine's light, Grant said. Harper got her mother's joy. I got her seriousness, her tendency to overthink everything. She got your capacity for deep love. That matters more than you know. Grant was quiet for a long moment. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you doing this? And please don't say it's because you care. I need to understand why you'd want to get involved in this mess in my life. Elena drew her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. Remember how I told you my sister died when I was 14? Yes. After she died, my parents fell apart. Completely. They stopped seeing me. They stopped seeing each other. They were so consumed by their grief that they forgot they still had a living daughter who needed them. Elena's voice was steady, but held old pain. I spent years being invisible, trying to be perfect, trying to earn back their attention. It nearly destroyed me. Grant's chest tightened. Elena, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because when I see you with Harper, I see something I never had. A parent who's still showing up, who's holding his child through grief instead of retreating from it. And I think maybe I needed to see that, to know it's possible. You're giving me too much credit. I'm barely holding it together. You're holding your daughter. That's what matters. Elena turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the porch light. And maybe selfishly, I'm here because being around you and Harper makes me believe in things I'd stopped believing in, like family, like healing, like the possibility that broken things can still be beautiful. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Grant felt something shift in his chest, the wall he'd built around his heart developing new cracks. I'm terrified, he admitted quietly. Of this, of you being here, of Harper getting attached, of me getting attached. Because the last time I let myself care about someone, the last time I thought the future was certain, his voice broke. She was gone, just gone, and I can't survive that again. I can't put Harper through that again. Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. Grant, I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise I'm not going to disappear without warning. I'm not going to let Harper get attached and then vanish. And I'm not going to hurt you if I can help it. How can you promise that? Because I know what it's like to be left. I know what abandonment does to a person. I would never knowingly inflict that pain on anyone, especially not on a child who's already lost so much. She paused. But Grant, you can't live in fear of loss forever. At some point, you have to decide if the risk of pain is worth the possibility of joy. Grant stared at the darkened garden. What if I'm not ready for that decision? Then we take it slow. One pizza night at a time. No pressure, no expectations, just being present with each other and seeing where it goes. He looked at her then, really looked at her.
This woman who'd started as a hired professional and become something he didn't have words for. Someone who saw his daughter's pain and didn't run from it. Someone who heard his grief and didn't try to fix it. Someone who was offering him the one thing he'd forgotten how to accept. Genuine human connection. One pizza night at a time, he repeated quietly, if that's what you need. What about what you need? Elena's smile was soft and sad. I need to believe that showing up matters, that sitting on bedroom floors and reading stories and just being present for people can make a difference. Working with you and Harper, it reminds me why I got into this work in the first place, to help people heal. You're not our therapist, Elena. No, I'm your friend, if you'll let me be. The word friend felt simultaneously too small and exactly right. Grant nodded slowly. I'd like that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the night settling around them. Finally, Elena stood to leave. At the front door, she paused. Same time next Friday? Harper would be devastated if you didn't come. And you? Elena's eyes searched his face. Grant allowed himself a small, genuine smile, the first in longer than he could remember. I'd be disappointed too. Elena's answering smile was radiant. Then I'll see you next Friday. She squeezed his hand briefly, a touch that was becoming familiar, grounding, and then she was gone, her car pulling out of the driveway and disappearing into the Seattle night. Grant stood in the doorway for a long time, feeling the ghost of her hand in his, wondering what exactly he'd just agreed to. But when he climbed the stairs to check on Harper one last time before bed, he found his daughter sleeping peacefully, Mr. Hopscotch clutched in her arms, a slight smile on her face. And Grant realized that whatever this was, friendship, connection, something more, Harper was already better for it. They both were. The following week developed a rhythm that felt both foreign and necessary. Elena texted occasionally, never intrusive, just small check-ins that made Grant feel less alone. How was Harper's spelling test? Or hope your board meeting went well? Or sometimes just a photo of something that had made her smile, offered without commentary. Grant found himself looking forward to those messages more than he wanted to admit. He'd respond, and they'd exchange a few texts. Nothing deep, nothing heavy, just the comfortable back and forth of two people getting to know each other. By Wednesday, Harper was already asking when Elena was coming back. By Thursday, she'd drawn a picture specifically to show her. By Friday afternoon, Grant had to stop himself from checking his watch every 10 minutes. This time when Elena arrived, Harper was waiting at the door, bouncing with barely contained energy. They'd decided on movie night instead of pizza, and Harper had spent an hour that afternoon arranging pillows and blankets in the living room into what she called the ultimate cozy fort. Elena came bearing gifts, microwave popcorn in 3 flavors, hot chocolate mix, and a stuffed turtle for Harper that she'd seen at a shop and thought Harper might like. You didn't have to bring anything, Grant said as Harper squealed with delight over the turtle. I wanted to, Elena replied simply. They made popcorn together, Harper standing on a step stool to watch the bag expand in the microwave with fascinated intensity. Elena made hot chocolate from scratch rather than using the mix, teaching Harper to whisk the cocoa powder into the milk while Grant assembled mugs. In the living room, Harper insisted Elena take the best spot in the blanket fort. They watched an animated movie about a girl who learned to trust her own strength, and halfway through, Harper migrated from her own pile of pillows to curl up against Elena's side as naturally as if she'd done it 100 times. Grant watched them in the flickering light of the television, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. This was dangerous territory. Harper was attaching, and he should probably slow this down, create boundaries, protect his daughter from potential future pain. But then Elena glanced over at him and smiled, and Harper laughed at something on screen, and Grant couldn't bring himself to stop it, because for the first time in 3 years, his house felt like a home again. After the movie ended and Harper had been tucked into bed, with both Grant and Elena reading stories this time, taking turns with different character voices, they found themselves on the back porch again. It was becoming their spot, Grant realized. The place where they could talk without little ears listening, where the darkness made honesty easier. This is becoming a habit, Elena said, settling into her chair. A bad one? No, a good one, actually.
She looked at him. Is this okay? Me being here? I don't want to overstep. Grant considered the question seriously. It's terrifying, but it's also good. Harper's happier than she's been in years, and He trailed off, unsure how to finish. You? Elena prompted gently. I forgot what it was like to have someone to talk to. Someone who isn't my therapist or my colleague, or someone who knew Catherine and looks at me with pity. He met her eyes. You see me as I am now, not as who I was. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Elena was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something I've been thinking about? Please. I think you're afraid that if you let yourself be happy again, it means you didn't love Catherine enough. Like being happy would be a betrayal of her memory. The words hit Grant like a physical blow because they were so precisely, devastatingly accurate. Am I wrong? Elena asked softly. No, Grant managed. You're exactly right. How did you know? Because I've seen it 100 times in my work. Grief comes with so much guilt. Guilt for surviving. Guilt for eventually laughing again. Guilt for moving forward when the person we loved can't. She leaned forward. But Grant, Catherine wouldn't want you frozen in grief forever. She wouldn't want Harper growing up in a house full of sadness. Would she? Grant's eyes burned. No, she'd be furious with me for wallowing. She always said I had a tendency toward melodrama. Elena smiled. She sounds like she was wonderful. She was. And for the first time in 3 years, talking about Catherine didn't feel like swallowing broken glass. She was brilliant and funny, and she never let me take myself too seriously. She would have liked you, I think. I would have liked to know her. They sat in silence, the words settling between them like a benediction. Grant felt something loosen in his chest. Permission, maybe, to begin imagining a future that included both honoring Catherine's memory and allowing new people into his life. Elena? He said quietly. Yes? Thank you for being patient with me, with us. I know we're complicated. Everyone's complicated, Grant. That's what makes us human. She stood, preparing to leave. Same time next week? Actually, Grant found himself saying, Harper has a school art show on Tuesday evening. It's just in the gym, nothing fancy, but she's been working on a project and she's really proud of it. Would you? He hesitated. Would you want to come? Elena's face lit up. I'd love to. And just like that, Elena Brooks moved from Friday night visitor to someone woven into the fabric of their weekly life. Someone who mattered. Someone they both wanted around. As Grant watched her car disappear once more into the night, he realized he'd crossed a threshold without quite meaning to. He'd stopped thinking of Elena as someone outside their life and started thinking of her as part of it. And the truly terrifying part was that it didn't feel wrong. It felt like coming home. Tuesday evening arrived with Harper in a state of controlled chaos, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on her favorite purple dress with the sparkly collar. She'd been talking about the art show nonstop since the weekend, alternating between excited chatter about her project and sudden anxiety that no one would like it. What if it's not as good as the other kids' work? She asked for the 5th time as Grant helped her into the car. Then it's still yours, and that makes it special, he said, repeating the same reassurance he'd given 4 times before. But what if... Harper. Grant crouched down to her level in the driveway, taking her small hands in his. Your art is beautiful because it came from your heart. That's all that matters. Elena and I are going to be so proud of you no matter what. The mention of Elena's name worked like magic. Harper's face brightened. She's really coming? She promised, didn't she? Harper nodded, some of the tension leaving her small shoulders. Grant stood, buckling her into her car seat, wondering when exactly his daughter had started finding comfort in Elena's presence the way she once found it in Catherine's. The thought should have scared him, and part of him was terrified, but mostly he was grateful that Harper had someone else to trust. They arrived at the elementary school 20 minutes early, the parking lot already half full with families. The gym had been transformed with student artwork covering every available wall space, bright construction paper and tempera paint creating a riot of color. Parents milled around with cameras and proud smiles while children darted between displays, showing off their creations. Harper grabbed Grant's hand tightly as they entered, suddenly shy in the crowd. He helped her find her project, a mixed media piece titled My Family, that showed two figures under a sun made of yellow tissue paper. One figure was tall with dark hair, clearly meant to be Grant. The other was small with pigtails, obviously Harper herself. Between them, she'd glued a photograph, one of the few pictures Grant had displayed in the house, showing Catherine laughing at the camera. "I wanted to show that Mommy's still part of our family," Harper explained quietly, "even though she's not here anymore. Is that okay?" Grant's throat closed completely. He knelt beside his daughter, not trusting himself to speak for a moment. When he finally found his voice, it came out rough and thick. "It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's perfect. You're not sad?" "I'm sad that Mommy isn't here to see this, but I'm so proud of you for remembering her, for keeping her in our family." He pulled Harper into a hug, pressing his face against her hair. "You did something really brave, Harper Bear." A familiar voice spoke from behind them. "She certainly did." Grant turned to find Elena standing there in a simple navy dress, holding a small bouquet of daisies. She'd clearly come straight from somewhere else, and the fact that she'd made the effort to be here made something warm bloom in Grant's chest. "Elena!" Harper launched herself at the woman, who caught her with practiced ease. "Hi, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss this for anything." Elena knelt down, looking at Harper's artwork with genuine attention. "This is beautiful, Harper. Tell me about it." Harper explained her project with growing confidence, pointing out details, how she'd used glitter for the sun because Mommy loved sparkly things, how the grass was made from strips of green paper because it's more interesting than just painting it, how she'd put hearts floating in the sky because that's where love lives. Elena listened with complete focus, asking thoughtful questions, pointing out techniques Harper had used. Grant watched them together. These two people who'd become essential to him in such different ways, and felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling further. Other parents began to notice them, a few recognizing Grant from various professional contexts. Margaret Chen from the foundation appeared with her son, doing a double take when she saw Elena. "Grant! And Elena, what a lovely surprise!" Margaret's smile was warm but curious. "I didn't realize you two were still... That is, it's good to see you both." Elena handled the awkward moment with grace. "Harper's artwork is stunning, isn't it? She has real talent." Harper beamed under the praise, and the conversation shifted to safe topics, children's art, school programs, upcoming events. But Grant caught the speculative looks from other parents, the whispered conversations behind hands. Word would spread quickly in Seattle's interconnected professional circles. Grant Matthews, the grieving widower, had brought a woman to his daughter's school event. Let them talk, Grant thought with surprising calm. He was tired of managing other people's perceptions of his grief. The evening progressed pleasantly. Harper dragged them around to see her classmates' projects, introducing Elena to her best friend Sophie with unselfconscious pride. "This is Elena. She's my friend. She comes to my house for pizza and movies." Sophie's mother, a warm woman named Jennifer, whom Grant had met at previous school functions, smiled at Elena with genuine friendliness rather than curiosity. "Any friend of Harper's is welcome anytime. These two are inseparable at school." "Harper's told me all about Sophie," Elena said warmly. "Apparently you're the fastest runner in first grade?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically, launching into a detailed explanation of her recess achievements. The four adults chatted while the girls examined artwork, and Grant found himself relaxing into the normalcy of it. Just parents at a school function, nothing unusual or worthy of gossip. When they left the school an hour later, Harper was riding high on praise and attention, clutching the ribbon her teacher had given every student. In the parking lot, she surprised Grant by asking, "Can Elena come home with us, please? We could have ice cream." Grant looked at Elena, giving her an out. "You've already given up your evening." "I'd love ice cream," Elena interrupted, her smile genuine, "if that's okay with you." 20 minutes later, they sat around Grant's kitchen table with bowls of chocolate ice cream, Harper regaling them with stories about her classmates' artwork and the compliments her teacher had given her. She was animated in a way Grant hadn't seen in years, gesturing with her spoon and talking with her mouth full until Grant gently reminded her of manners. "Sorry, Daddy, I'm just excited." Harper grinned, a chocolate mustache on her upper lip. "I can see that." Grant wiped her face with a napkin, his heart full in a way that ached.
This was how Catherine had always dreamed their family life would be: comfortable, happy, full of simple joys like ice cream and laughter. After Harper was in bed, insisting that both adults come up to say goodnight, Grant and Elena found themselves once again on the back porch. The evening air carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine from the neighbor's yard, and the city lights twinkled in the distance. "You didn't have to come tonight," Grant said, breaking the comfortable silence. "But I'm glad you did. I wanted to be there. Harper worked hard on that project, and she was so proud of it." Elena paused. It was brave of her to include Catherine like that. She asked if it was okay, if I'd be sad. Grant's voice caught, as if she needed my permission to remember her own mother.
She was checking to see if talking about Catherine would hurt you. Children are incredibly perceptive about their parents' pain. They learn very quickly what topics are safe and which ones cause the adults to fall apart. Grant was quiet for a long moment. "I've been trying so hard to protect her from my grief that I think I taught her it wasn't okay to feel hers." "You've been doing the best you can. That's all anyone can do." Elena shifted in her chair. "But Grant, maybe it's time to let Harper see that you miss Catherine too. That it's okay for both of you to talk about her, to remember her, even if it hurts sometimes. I don't want Harper to feel like she has to take care of me. There's a difference between burdening a child with adult emotions and showing them that sadness is normal. Harper needs to know that missing someone doesn't mean you're broken. It means you love deeply." The words resonated through Grant like a bell. He thought about all the times he'd held back tears in front of Harper, changed the subject when she mentioned Catherine, tried to be strong and stoic and unbreakable. Had he taught his daughter that grief was something to hide? That love was too dangerous because loss hurt too much? "How did you get so wise?" he asked softly. Elena's laugh was self-deprecating. "Years of therapy and making every mistake in the book. I told you I burned out from my counseling work. That didn't happen because I had everything figured out. It happened because I tried to carry everyone else's pain and forgot to acknowledge my own." "Is that why you do this now? The companion work?" "Partly. It allows me to be present for people without taking on their entire emotional load. I can show up, offer support, and then go home and maintain my own boundaries." She paused. "Although lately those boundaries have gotten a bit blurry." Grant looked at her. "Is that a problem?" "I don't know yet." Elena met his eyes. "This was supposed to be one evening, a business arrangement, but somewhere between your daughter's bedroom floor and pizza nights and elementary school art shows, it became something else." "What did it become?" "I'm not entirely sure, but I know I think about you and Harper when I'm not here. I know I look forward to Fridays in a way I haven't looked forward to anything in years, and I know that what I feel when I'm with you both is more than professional concern." Grant's heart hammered against his ribs. "Elena, you don't have to say anything," she interrupted gently. "I'm not asking for declarations or commitments. I just wanted you to know where I stand, because I think you've been wondering if I'm just here out of some sense of obligation or pity, and I need you to understand that's not it at all." Grant stood, moved by an impulse he didn't fully understand, and walked to the porch railing. Elena joined him, standing close enough that their shoulders almost touched. In the darkness, with the city spread out before them like scattered diamonds, it was easier to be honest. "I'm terrified," he admitted quietly, "of what I'm starting to feel, of what it means. Catherine was everything to me, and when she died, I thought that was it. I thought I'd had my chance at love and lost it, and the rest of my life would just be about surviving and taking care of Harper. And now? Now you're here, and you make me feel things I thought I'd never feel again. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make my daughter smile in ways I couldn't manage on my own." He turned to look at her. "And that terrifies me because the last time I loved someone, the last time I let myself believe in a future, it was ripped away without warning. I can't go through that again. I can't put Harper through that." Elena was quiet for a long moment, her profile illuminated by the porch light. When she spoke, her voice was steady but vulnerable. "I can't promise you that nothing bad will ever happen, Grant. I can't promise I'll live forever or that life won't throw terrible things at us. No one can promise that." "Then what can you promise?" "I can promise I'm here now. Right now, in this moment, I'm choosing to be here. I can promise that I care about you and Harper deeply, and that I'm not going to run away when things get difficult. She turned to face him fully. And I can promise that if you give us a chance, I will show up every day, for as long as you'll have me. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and risk. Grant felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, one step away from falling into something that could either save him or destroy what was left of his heart. "What if I'm not ready?" he whispered. "Then we wait. We keep doing what we're doing, pizza nights and movie nights and school events, until you are ready, or until you realize you don't want this," and I gracefully step back. Elena's eyes searched his face. "But Grant, I think you need to ask yourself something. Are you actually not ready, or are you just afraid? Because those are two different things." Grant stared at her, the question cutting through all his carefully constructed defenses. Was he not ready? Or was he just terrified of being happy again, of letting someone new into his heart, of admitting that life could still hold joy even after devastating loss? "I don't know," he said honestly. "I don't know how to tell the difference anymore." Elena reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm against his. "That's okay. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. But Grant, I need you to know something. I'm not Catherine. I'm not trying to replace her or erase her memory. Whatever this is between us, it's something new. It doesn't diminish what you had before." Harper included Catherine in her art project tonight. "I know, and it was beautiful." "You weren't threatened by that? By the fact that she still thinks of her mother as part of our family?" Elena squeezed his hand. "Of course not. Catherine is part of your family. She always will be. She's Harper's mother. She's the woman you loved. Nothing that happens between us changes that." Her voice softened. "Grant, I would never ask you or Harper to forget Catherine. That's not how love works. We don't stop loving people just because they're gone. We just learn to make room for new love alongside the old." Something in Grant's chest cracked open completely at those words. For 3 years, he'd been operating under the assumption that moving forward meant leaving Catherine behind, that being happy again would be a betrayal, that any new relationship would require erasing the memory of his late wife. But Elena was offering him something different, permission to honor Catherine's memory while still embracing the possibility of a future, permission to be happy without guilt, permission to love again without forgetting his first love. "I feel something for you," he said quietly, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "Something terrifying, something that makes me want to pull you closer and push you away at the same time, and I don't know what to do with it." Elena's eyes shimmered in the porch light. "What do you want to do with it?" Grant looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who'd knelt on his daughter's bedroom floor to tell stories, who'd shown up to an elementary school art show without hesitation, who'd sat in his kitchen at midnight and held space for his grief, who'd somehow, impossibly, reminded him what it felt like to be alive. "I want to stop being afraid," he whispered. "I want to trust that life can still be good, that I can let someone in without losing everything again." "Then trust," Elena said softly. "Not in some guaranteed future, not in promises that nothing bad will ever happen. Just trust that right now in this moment, what we're building together is real and worth protecting." Grant stared at their joined hands, at the way Elena's fingers had somehow become familiar against his. He thought about Harper sleeping upstairs, peaceful and happy in ways she hadn't been in years. He thought about Catherine and what she would say if she could see him now. Probably something like, "Stop being an idiot and let yourself be happy, you melodramatic fool." The thought made him smile despite the tears threatening to spill over. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Okay, I'll try. I can't promise I won't panic or sabotage this or do something stupid out of fear. But I'll try to trust, to be present, to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop." He looked up at Elena. "If you're patient with me." Elena's smile was radiant. "I can be patient." They stood there on the porch, hands clasped, the weight of admission hanging between them. It wasn't a declaration of love, it wasn't a commitment to forever, but it was something, an agreement to try, to be open, to see where this connection might lead. "I should go," Elena said eventually, though she didn't move. "It's late." Stay, Grant said, then immediately backtracked. I mean, not like that. I mean, we have a guest room, and it's late, and He was fumbling, suddenly awkward. I just don't want you to go yet. Elena's smile was gentle. I'll stay for a bit longer, but I should sleep in my own bed tonight. We're taking this slow, remember? Right, slow. Grant felt simultaneously relieved and disappointed. They went back inside, settling on the living room couch with mugs of tea that neither of them really wanted, but provided something to do with their hands. They talked about everything and nothing. Elena's work, Grant's latest project at the company, Harper's progress in school, favorite books, embarrassing childhood stories. At some point, Elena's head ended up on Grant's shoulder, and his arm found its way around her. It felt natural, easy, like a gesture they'd performed 1,000 times before. Grant tried to remember the last time he'd held someone like this, and realized with a jolt that it had been Catherine, the night before she died, both of them exhausted and falling asleep on this very same couch after Harper's 5th birthday party. The memory should have made him pull away, should have filled him with guilt. But instead, it felt like Catherine was giving her blessing, like she'd approve of this woman who was helping her daughter heal, who was teaching Grant how to live again. What are you thinking? Elena murmured. That Catherine would have liked you, Grant said honestly. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me brood, someone who'd call me on my nonsense. Smart woman, the smartest. Grant paused. Is it weird that I'm talking about her while holding you? No. It would be weird if you didn't talk about her. She's part of your story, Grant, part of who you are. Elena shifted slightly to look up at him. I want to know about her, about your life before. Not in a jealous way, but in a genuinely interested way. She helped make you who you are, and I like who you are. Grant found himself talking then, really talking about Catherine for the first time in years. Not the sanitized version he gave when people asked, but the real Catherine, brilliant and impatient and funny, terrible at cooking but insistent on trying, convinced she could fix anything with enough determination, the way she'd snort when she laughed really hard. How she'd stolen his college sweatshirt and worn it until it fell apart. Elena listened without trying to compare herself or change the subject. She asked questions that showed she was really hearing him, not just waiting for him to finish. And slowly, Grant felt another piece of his grief loosen and transform into something softer, not forgetting, but remembering with less pain. She sounds wonderful, Elena said when he finally fell silent. She was. And she would have hated that I've spent 3 years being miserable in her name. She was big on living life fully, on squeezing every moment of joy out of existence. Grant smiled sadly. She used to say that fear was the only real waste of time. Then maybe, Elena said carefully, honoring her memory means living the way she would have wanted you to, fully, joyfully, open to whatever life brings next. Grant looked down at Elena, at this woman who'd somehow seen through all his defenses to the heart of what he needed to hear. When did you get so good at this? Years of practice and making every mistake first. She sat up, smoothing her dress. But seriously, I should go. It's almost midnight, and you have work tomorrow. This time, Grant didn't try to stop her. He walked her to the door, suddenly uncertain about the etiquette of the moment. Were they dating? Were they friends? What had just happened on the porch? Elena seemed to sense his confusion. At the door, she turned and cupped his face gently with one hand. We don't have to define this tonight, Grant. We're just two people who care about each other, taking things one day at a time. Okay? Okay, he managed. She leaned up and kissed his cheek, a brief, warm press of lips that sent electricity through his entire body. Good night, Grant. Good night. He watched her drive away, his hand touching his cheek where she'd kissed him, feeling like a teenager after his first date. Inside, the house felt different somehow, less like a mausoleum of grief and more like a home where people actually lived. Upstairs, he checked on Harper one last time. She was sprawled across her bed, Mr. Hopscotch abandoned on the floor, her ribbon from the art show clutched in one hand even in sleep. Grant retrieved the stuffed rabbit and tucked it beside her, then stood watching his daughter breathe. I'm trying, Harper Bear, he whispered. I'm trying to be brave enough to let us be happy again. In her sleep, Harper smiled, as if she'd heard him and approved. The next few weeks unfolded with a rhythm that began to feel like normal life rather than survival. Elena came for Friday pizza nights, which sometimes turned into Saturday morning pancakes when Harper begged her to stay for breakfast. They went to the zoo one weekend, Harper insisting on holding both their hands as they walked between exhibits. They visited a pumpkin patch as October arrived, Harper choosing the perfect pumpkin with Elena's help, while Grant took pictures on his phone that he'd later look at dozens of times. At work, Grant found himself lighter somehow, more present in meetings, quicker to smile. Marcus noticed and cornered him in the executive kitchen one afternoon. "You're different lately," his COO observed. "Good different. The Elena effect?" Grant didn't bother denying it. "Maybe." "Good. It's about time." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Catherine would approve, you know. She always said you needed someone to remind you how to be human." The words echoed what Elena had said, and Grant felt a wave of gratitude for the people in his life who understood that moving forward didn't mean forgetting. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments when panic would seize Grant out of nowhere, watching Elena laugh at something Harper said and suddenly being terrified of losing this, of having something precious ripped away again. There were nights when he'd lie awake cataloging all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons he should protect himself and Harper by pulling back. Elena seemed to sense these moments of doubt. She never pushed, never demanded more than he could give, but she also never disappeared. She remained steady, present, exactly what he needed, even when he didn't know how to ask for it. One Friday evening, almost 2 months after the gala, Harper made an announcement over pizza that stopped Grant's heart. "I love Elena," she said matter-of-factly, reaching for another slice. "Like family love. Is that okay?" Grant froze, his mind racing. This was what he'd been afraid of, Harper getting attached, loving someone who might not stay, setting herself up for potential heartbreak. But Elena handled it with her usual grace. "I love you too, Harper. Like family love." "Do you love my daddy?" Harper asked with 6-year-old directness. The room fell silent. Grant couldn't breathe. Elena set down her pizza carefully, her expression serious but warm. "I care about your daddy very much," she said honestly. "We're still figuring out what that means, but yes, I have very strong feelings for him." Harper considered this, then nodded as if it made perfect sense. "Good, because I think he needs someone to love him besides me. I'm only 6, so I can't do everything." The casual wisdom of it made Grant's eyes burn. Out of the mouths of babes, Catherine would have said. "You do plenty, sweetheart," Grant managed, his voice thick. "You do more than you know." After Harper was in bed that night, Grant and Elena stood on the back porch in comfortable silence. Finally, Grant spoke. "She loves you." "I know. That terrifies me." "I know that too." Grant turned to face Elena fully. "I need to know that you're in this. Really in this. Because if Harper loves you and you decide this isn't what you want, if you leave..." "Grant." Elena took both his hands. "I'm in this. I'm not going anywhere. I know you're afraid and I understand why, but you need to hear me when I say this. I'm not leaving, not unless you ask me to." "What if something happens to you? What if the sky falls? What if an asteroid hits Earth? What if any of a million terrible things that might never happen?" Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Grant, we can't live our lives in fear of hypothetical tragedies. All we can do is be here now, love each other now, and trust that whatever comes, we'll face it together." Grant stared at her, this woman who'd walked into his life as a hired companion and become something infinitely more precious. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered, "and it terrifies me." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I'm falling in love with you too, both of you. And yes, it's terrifying. But Grant, love is worth the fear, always." He kissed her then, properly kissed her for the first time, and it felt like diving off that cliff he'd been standing on for months, terrifying and exhilarating and exactly right. Elena kissed him back with equal tenderness and passion, her arms wrapping around his neck, and for a moment the fear disappeared entirely, replaced by the simple truth that he was alive. She was here, and happiness was possible again. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena laughed softly. "Well, that was worth waiting for." "We're really doing this," Grant said, half statement, half question. We're really doing this. Elena smiled up at him. One day at a time. No guarantees except that we show up for each other. Can you live with that? Grant thought about Catherine, about Harper, about 3 years of grief and survival. He thought about this woman who'd helped him remember how to feel again. And he realized that yes, he could live with uncertainty if it meant he got to live fully. Yes, he said, I can live with that. The kiss changed everything and nothing at all. Elena still came for Friday pizza nights, still read Harper bedtime stories, still sat on the back porch with Grant talking about everything under the stars. But now there were stolen moments, hands held under the dinner table, quick kisses in the kitchen when Harper wasn't looking, the way Elena's fingers would trace patterns on Grant's arm while they watched movies, casual and intimate in equal measure. Grant found himself smiling at odd moments during the day, caught off guard by memories of Elena's laugh, or the way she'd looked at him the night before. His assistant Monica noticed and commented that he seemed lighter, happier. Even the board members remarked during meetings that Grant seemed more engaged, more present than he'd been in years. You're different, Matthews, Richard Thornton said after a particularly productive foundation meeting in late October. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Grant thought about Elena, about Harper's laughter filling the house again, about how life had started to feel like living rather than merely surviving. I intend to, he replied. But it wasn't all easy. There were complicated moments that required navigation, like the evening Marcus and his wife invited them to dinner, and Grant had to decide whether to bring Elena, whether to introduce her as his girlfriend, whether Harper was ready to see their relationship publicly acknowledged. What do you think? He asked Elena over the phone, pacing his office. Is it too soon? Will it confuse Harper? Grant, Harper already knows we care about each other. She asked me point blank if I loved you, remember? Elena's voice was patient. But if you're not ready to make this public, that's okay too. We can wait. It's not about being ready. It's about... Grant struggled to articulate the fear. Once we go public, once people know, it becomes real in a different way. There are expectations, questions, judgments about how long is appropriate to grieve before moving on. And you're worried people will think you didn't love Catherine enough. Yes, Grant admitted quietly. Elena was silent for a moment. Do you think you didn't love Catherine enough? No, God no, I loved her completely. Then what anyone else thinks doesn't matter. The people who love you will understand. The people who don't understand don't matter. She paused. But Grant, I'm not going to pressure you. If you need more time before we go to dinner parties as a couple, I understand. Grant closed his eyes, remembering Catherine's voice in his head. Stop worrying about what other people think and live your damn life, Grant. She'd said that to him 100 times, usually when he was overthinking some social situation. No, he said finally. No, I want you to come. I want people to know. I'm tired of hiding what makes me happy just because I'm afraid of judgment. Elena's smile was audible through the phone. Okay then, when's dinner? Saturday at 7. And Elena? Yes? Thank you. For being patient with me. For understanding why this is hard. Always. Saturday arrived with Grant feeling like he was preparing for battle rather than a dinner party. He changed his shirt 3 times before Harper, sitting on his bed watching this display, announced, Daddy, you look nice in all of them. Elena's going to like you no matter what. The simple wisdom of 6-year-olds never ceased to amaze him. You're right, Harper Bear. Thank you. Can I wear my sparkly dress? Absolutely. They picked up Elena at her apartment, a cozy space in Capitol Hill that Grant had only visited once before, filled with books and plants and the comfortable clutter of a life well lived. She emerged wearing a burgundy dress that made Grant temporarily forget how to form words. Harper had no such problem. Elena, you look like a princess. Thank you, sweetheart. So do you. Elena knelt down to admire Harper's sparkly dress, then stood and met Grant's eyes. Hi. Hi, he managed. You're beautiful. Her smile was soft and slightly nervous. You clean up pretty well yourself. The drive to Marcus's house in Queen Anne was filled with Harper's chatter about school and the new book she was reading and whether Marcus's kids would be there to play with. Elena answered every question, while her hand found Grant's on the console between them, squeezing gently when she felt his tension. Marcus and his wife Jennifer answered the door together, their 3 kids immediately swarming Harper and dragging her off to the playroom. Jennifer, a warm woman with graying blonde hair and laugh lines around her eyes, pulled Elena into a hug as if they'd known each other for years. "I'm so glad you're here," Jennifer said. "Marcus has told me so much about you both." They settled in the living room with drinks while the kids played upstairs, their laughter and running footsteps a comforting soundtrack. Marcus raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his eyes on Grant with understanding and approval. Grant felt the tightness in his chest ease slightly. Marcus had known Catherine, had been at their wedding, had held Grant together during the worst of the grief. If Marcus approved of Elena, if he could see this as honoring Catherine's memory rather than betraying it, then maybe Grant was on the right path. Dinner was comfortable in ways Grant hadn't expected. Jennifer was easy to talk to, asking Elena about her background without being intrusive, sharing stories about their own family that had everyone laughing. The kids joined them for dessert, Harper proudly introducing Elena to Marcus's children as "my friend who comes to our house all the time." It was Marcus's daughter, 8-year-old Lily, who asked the question that made the adults freeze. "Are you Harper's new mom?" The room went silent. Harper looked up from her ice cream, suddenly uncertain. Grant's heart hammered, but Elena handled it with the grace she brought to everything. "No, sweetheart. Harper's mom is someone very special who isn't here anymore, but she'll always be Harper's mom." Elena glanced at Grant, then back at Lily. "I'm Harper's friend, and her dad's friend, and I love them both very much." Lily considered this seriously, then nodded and returned to her dessert as if the matter was settled. Harper's shoulders relaxed, and Grant realized he'd been holding his breath. After dinner, while the kids played and Jennifer made coffee, Marcus pulled Grant aside on their back deck. "She's good for you," Marcus said without preamble. "Elena, I've never seen you like this, not even before Catherine died. You're present, really present." "I'm terrified," Grant admitted. "Every day I'm terrified something will happen, that I'll lose her, that Harper will lose her, that I'll have to go through that grief again." Catherine's death was tragic and sudden, but Grant, you can't live your whole life afraid of tragedy. That's not living. That's just existing. Marcus turned to face him. "Catherine loved you. She would want you to be happy. She would like Elena, I think. And she would absolutely hate that you've spent 3 years in this half-life because you're afraid to move forward." "How do you know?" "Because I knew Catherine, and because she told me once, after her father died, that the worst thing about grief is how it can make us afraid to love again. She said we owe it to the people we've lost to keep living fully, to keep loving deeply, to squeeze every bit of joy out of life we can." Marcus clapped Grant on the shoulder. "You're doing that now. Don't stop." Inside, Grant found Elena helping Jennifer with dishes while Harper and the other kids performed an elaborate play they'd created. He watched Elena laugh at something Jennifer said, watched her dry a plate with the comfortable ease of someone who belonged here, and felt something settle in his chest. This was right. This was good. And Catherine would approve. The drive home was quiet, Harper asleep in the back seat within minutes. Elena's hand found Grant's again, and they drove through Seattle's nighttime streets in comfortable silence. "That went well," Elena said eventually. "It did. Marcus and Jennifer really like you. I really like them. And Grant?" She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for including me tonight. I know it wasn't easy. It was easier than I expected, probably because you handled Lily's question so perfectly." Grant glanced at her. "You always know what to say." "Not always, but I've had a lot of practice with difficult questions from children." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Was it okay? What I told her? About not being Harper's mom?" "It was perfect. Because it's the truth." Grant pulled into his driveway, turning off the engine but not moving to get out. "Elena, I need you to know something. Whatever this is between us, wherever it goes, Catherine will always be part of it. She's Harper's mother. She's the woman I loved. I can't erase that. I don't want you to erase that. I never want you to." Elena turned to face him in the darkness of the car. "Grant,
I fell in love with you knowing you were a widower, knowing you had this history, knowing you came as a package deal with a daughter who'd lost her mother. I'm not trying to replace Catherine. I'm just trying to love you both as you are now." Grant leaned across the console and kissed her, slow and deep, trying to convey everything he felt but couldn't quite put into words. When they broke apart, Elena was smiling. "Come on," she said softly. "Let's get our girl inside." Our girl. The phrase made Grant's heart skip. Elena had said it so naturally, as if Harper belonged to both of them now. And maybe, Grant thought as he carried his sleeping daughter inside, she did. November brought rain and shorter days and a conversation with Harper that Grant had been dreading. They were doing bedtime routine, Harper in her pajamas and brushing her teeth, when she asked the question he'd known was coming. "Daddy, is Elena your girlfriend?" Grant paused in the doorway of the bathroom. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" Harper spit out toothpaste and rinsed her mouth. "Because you kiss her sometimes. I saw you in the kitchen last week." There was no judgment in Harper's voice, just curiosity. Grant knelt down to her level. "Does that bother you, that I kiss Elena?" Harper thought about it seriously. "I don't know. It's different, but I like Elena, and you smile more when she's here. You're not as sad." I was sad for a long time, wasn't I? "Yeah. After Mommy died, you were sad all the time. Even when you tried to hide it, I could tell." Harper's eyes were too wise for 6 years old. "But Elena makes you happy. She makes me happy too." Grant pulled his daughter into a hug. "You're right. Elena does make me happy. And yes, she's my girlfriend. Is that okay with you?" Harper pulled back to look at him. "Does it mean you don't love Mommy anymore?" The question hit Grant like a physical blow. "Oh, Harper, no, I will always love Mommy. She was special and wonderful, and she gave me you, which is the best gift I ever got." But he struggled to find words a 6-year-old would understand. People's hearts are big enough to love more than one person. I loved Mommy, and I always will. But that doesn't mean I can't also care about Elena. They're different kinds of love. Like how I love you and Mrs. Walsh and Sophie and Elena. Different, but all love? Exactly like that. Grant marveled at his daughter's understanding. "So it's okay with you, me and Elena?" Harper nodded slowly. "As long as Elena stays, I don't want her to go away like Mommy did." There it was, the fear that lived underneath everything. Grant held Harper close. "Elena's not going anywhere, sweetheart. She promised." "Mommy didn't mean to go away, though, right? It just happened." Grant's throat closed. They'd had this conversation in various forms 100 times, but it never got easier. "That's right. Mommy didn't choose to leave us. Sometimes things happen that nobody can control, but Elena is healthy and careful, and she plans to be around for a very long time." Harper seemed satisfied with that answer. As Grant tucked her into bed, she asked one more question. "Daddy, can Elena come to Thanksgiving? Would you like that?" "Yeah, I think Mommy would like her too. I think Mommy would be glad you're not sad all the time anymore." Out of the mouths of babes, Grant thought, kissing Harper's forehead. "I think you're right, Harper Bear." After Harper fell asleep, Grant called Elena. "Harper knows," he said without preamble. "About us. She saw us kiss." There was a pause. "How did she react?" "She asked if it was okay. If it meant I didn't love Catherine anymore. If you were going to go away." "Oh, sweetheart," Elena murmured. "What did you tell her?" Grant recounted the conversation, hearing Elena's soft sounds of understanding. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "She's worried I'll leave," Elena said finally, "like her mother did." "Yes, but Elena, I told her you promised to stay, that you're not going anywhere. Please tell me that's still true." "Grant, I'm not going anywhere. I promise. I promise, Harper. I promise you." Elena's voice was fierce. "I understand her fear, and I understand yours, but I need you both to hear me. I am here. I am choosing this. Every day, I'm choosing you both." Grant felt tears prick his eyes. "She wants you at Thanksgiving." "What?" "She asked if you could come to Thanksgiving. We usually go to my parents' house in Bellevue, and would you come? I know it's meeting the parents, which is a big step, but Grant, I would love to come to Thanksgiving. Elena's voice was warm. If you want me there, I want you everywhere, Grant admitted quietly. That's what terrifies me. How much I want you in our lives. How much Harper loves you. How complete everything feels when you're around. Why does that terrify you? Because complete things can shatter, and I don't know if I'd survive it a second time. Elena was quiet for so long that Grant thought the call had dropped. Finally, she spoke, her voice gentle but firm. Grant, do you remember what you told Harper? That your heart is big enough to love more than one person? That loving me doesn't diminish your love for Catherine? Yes. The same is true for loss. If something happened to me, which it won't, but if it did, you would survive it. Not because you loved me less than you loved Catherine, but because you're stronger than you think. You survived Catherine's death. You rebuilt your life. You raised your daughter through impossible grief. You learned how to be happy again. She paused. You're not the same man you were 3 years ago. You're stronger now. And you wouldn't be facing it alone. You'd have Harper. You'd have Marcus and Jennifer. You'd have your parents. You'd have everyone who loves you. That's not as comforting as you think it is. I know, because the comfort isn't in knowing you'd survive. The comfort should be in knowing that nothing is going to happen. I'm healthy, I'm careful, and I plan to be around for decades to annoy you with my persistent optimism and my terrible taste in reality TV. Despite himself, Grant laughed. You do watch terrible TV. The worst. And you're going to be stuck watching it with me for years, so stop catastrophizing and just be here with me now, okay? Okay, Grant said softly. And Elena? Yes? I love you. The words hung in the air. Grant had said them to Catherine countless times, casual and constant as breathing, but this was the first time he'd said them to anyone else in 8 years, and they felt momentous. Elena's breath caught audibly. Grant, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I love you. Not the same way I loved Catherine, but just as deeply. Maybe more deeply because this time I know how precious it is, how easily it can be lost. Grant Matthews, I love you too. Elena's voice was thick with emotion. I love you and Harper both, more than I ever thought I could love anyone. You're my family now. They talked for another hour about nothing important. Elena's day at work, Harper's upcoming school play, plans for the weekend. But underneath every word was the weight of those 3 words. I love you. They changed everything and nothing, made the future feel both terrifying and possible. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear, with morning frost on the windows and Harper vibrating with excitement about seeing her grandparents and introducing them to Elena. Grant's mother had been carefully neutral on the phone when he'd mentioned bringing Elena, saying only, if she's important to you, then we want to meet her. Grant's father had been more direct. It's about damn time you let yourself be happy again, son. Bring the girl. We'll be nice. They drove to Bellevue mid-morning, the car loaded with dishes Grant's mother had requested they bring. Harper chattered nonstop from the back seat, telling Elena about Grandma's house and Grandpa's workshop and the big tree in the backyard where Mommy used to climb when she was little. Elena listened patiently, occasionally catching Grant's eye with a small smile. She dressed carefully, a burgundy sweater dress that was elegant but not trying too hard, her hair in soft waves, minimal makeup. She looked beautiful and nervous in equal measure. They're gonna love you, Grant said quietly as they pulled up to his parents' craftsman-style home. You can't know that. I do know that, because they love Harper and Harper loves you, and that's all that matters to them. His mother, Susan Matthews, opened the door before they could knock. She was a small woman with silver hair and Grant's same gray eyes, and she pulled Harper into a fierce hug before turning her attention to Elena. You must be Elena. I'm Susan. She held out her hand, but her eyes were assessing, protective. It's lovely to meet you. It's wonderful to meet you too, Mrs. Matthews. Thank you for having me. Elena's voice was steady, despite the nerves Grant knew she must be feeling. Grant's father, Robert, emerged from the kitchen wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was tall and still broad-shouldered at 68, with a beard more silver than brown and the kind of quiet strength Grant had always tried to emulate. So you're the one who's got my son smiling again, Robert said, shaking Elena's hand firmly. Good. It's about time. Dad, Grant warned,
but there was no heat in it. The first hour was carefully polite, making small talk in the kitchen while Susan finished cooking. Harper showing Elena her favorite hiding spots in the house. Robert asking Elena about her work with genuine interest. But Grant could feel the underlying tension, the questions his parents weren't asking. It was Harper who broke through it, as children often do. After they'd sat down to dinner and said grace, Harper announced proudly, "Elena's daddy's girlfriend, and she loves us like family. She said so." The table fell silent. Grant's mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. His father's eyes moved from Harper to Elena to Grant. "Is that right?" Susan said carefully. "Yes, ma'am," Elena said quietly. "I care about your son and granddaughter very much." "And Catherine?" The question came from Susan, her voice tight. "What about Catherine's memory?" "Mom," Grant started, but Elena touched his hand gently. "Mrs. Matthews, I never knew Catherine, but I know she was an incredible woman. I know she loved your son and granddaughter more than anything. I know Harper carries her mother in her heart every day." Elena's voice was steady and respectful. "I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just trying to love the family she left behind." Susan's eyes filled with tears. "She was my daughter-in-law. I loved her like she was my own." "I know, and I would never want to diminish that or pretend she didn't exist. Catherine is part of this family's story. She always will be." Grant watched his mother struggle with emotion, saw his father reach over to squeeze her hand. Finally, Susan nodded slowly. "Catherine would have wanted Grant to be happy," she said quietly, almost to herself. "She told me once, after her father died, that if anything happened to her, I should make sure Grant didn't spend his life alone, that he was too good at drowning in his own head." Grant's throat closed. "She said that?" "Right after Harper was born. We were in the hospital, just the two of us, and she was holding this tiny baby. And she said, 'If something happens to me, Susan, don't let Grant stop living. Promise me.'" Susan wiped her eyes. "I told her nothing was going to happen to her, but she made me promise anyway." The table was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Grant stared at his plate, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. Catherine had known. Somehow, she'd known. "So if this lovely woman makes you happy," Susan continued, her voice stronger now, "if she makes Harper happy, if she's helping you both heal, then Catherine would approve, and so do I." Elena's eyes shimmered with tears. "Thank you." "But," Susan added, her voice taking on a mother's firmness, "if you hurt my son or my granddaughter, we will have words. Clear?" "Crystal clear, ma'am." Elena's smile was watery but genuine. The tension broke. Robert raised his glass. "To new family members and to Catherine's memory. May we honor her by living fully and loving deeply." They clinked glasses and Harper beamed. "Does this mean Elena's officially family now?" "I think it does, Harper Bear," Grant said, his voice rough with emotion. The rest of the meal was warmer, easier. Susan asked Elena about her childhood, her family, her work. Robert told embarrassing stories about Grant's youth that made Harper giggle and Elena smile. They talked about Catherine, too, remembering her laugh, her stubbornness, her terrible cooking, the time she decided to repaint the nursery herself while 8 months pregnant and ended up with more paint on herself than the walls. Elena listened to these stories with interest rather than discomfort, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts. She didn't try to change the subject or make it about her. She just let Catherine be present at the table, part of the family narrative. After dinner, while the adults cleaned up, Harper dragged Elena to the backyard to see the famous climbing tree. Through the kitchen window, Grant watched them together, Elena pointing at something in the branches, Harper explaining something with animated gestures, both of them laughing. "She's good with Harper," Susan said quietly beside him. "She's good with both of us." "You love her." It wasn't a question, but Grant answered anyway. "Yes, I do. Not the way I loved Catherine, but Grant." His mother turned to face him. "Stop qualifying it. You love her. That's enough. It doesn't diminish what you had with Catherine. The heart doesn't work that way." "Everyone keeps telling me that. Because it's true, and because we all see what we've been praying for, you coming back to life." Susan cupped his face with one hand, the way she'd done when he was a child. My boy, you've been in so much pain for so long. If Elena can help ease that pain, if she can help you remember how to be happy, then she's a blessing. Don't sabotage it by overthinking. Grant leaned into his mother's touch. I'm terrified of losing her. I know, but son, you can't live your life afraid of loss. That's not living. That's just waiting to die. She dropped her hand. Catherine's death was tragic and unfair, but you survived it. You raised Harper through it. You're stronger than you think. Elena said almost the exact same thing. Smart woman. Susan smiled. Hold on to her, Grant. Women who can handle you at your most difficult are rare. Outside, Elena and Harper had climbed onto the lower branches of the tree, both of them laughing about something. The late afternoon sun turned Elena's auburn hair to copper, and Harper's face was alight with joy. Grant pulled out his phone and took a picture. Not to post or share, just to remember this moment. His daughter and the woman he loved, both of them happy, both of them his. I intend to, he told his mother quietly. The drive home that evening was peaceful. Harper fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from playing with her grandparents. Elena's hand found Grant's as they drove through the darkening November evening. Your parents are wonderful, she said softly. They loved you. My mother pulled me aside before we left and told me not to screw this up. Elena laughed quietly. Good advice. Elena, what my mother said about Catherine, about her making my mom promise that I wouldn't stop living, did that bother you? That Catherine thought about this, about me being with someone else? No, it makes me respect her even more. She loved you enough to want you to be happy, even if she wasn't there to see it. Elena squeezed his hand. That's the kind of love everyone should have. Generous and far-reaching. Grant brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. I don't deserve you. That's where you're wrong. You deserve all the happiness in the world, Grant Matthews. You and Harper both. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Grant spoke again. Move in with us. The words hung in the air. Elena turned to stare at him. What? Move in with us. You're at the house almost every day anyway. Harper already thinks of you as family. My parents love you. And he glanced at her. I hate watching you leave every night. I hate waking up without you. I hate that your toothbrush isn't in my bathroom and your clothes aren't in my closet. Move in with us. Grant, that's a huge step. I know. And if you're not ready, I understand. We can wait. But Elena, I'm ready. I want you in my life permanently, officially, completely. I want Harper to wake up and see you at breakfast. I want you there for the hard days and the easy days and everything in between. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her hand still in his. Finally, she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll move in with you and Harper. Yes to all of it. Grant felt something burst open in his chest. Joy, relief, terror, hope, all mixed together. Really? Really? I love you, Grant. I love Harper. I want to build a life with you both, so yes, I'll move in. He pulled the car over to the side of the road, not caring that they were blocks from home, and kissed her properly. She kissed him back with equal fervor, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. From the back seat, Harper's sleepy voice interrupted them. Are we home? Almost, sweetheart, Grant said, unable to stop smiling. Almost home. They told Harper the next morning over pancakes, Elena having stayed the night in the guest room as she often did on weekends. Harper was pouring an ambitious amount of syrup onto her stack when Grant cleared his throat. Harper Bear, Elena and I want to talk to you about something important. Harper looked up, syrup bottle paused mid-pour, her eyes suddenly wary. Grant recognized that look, the fear that flashed across his daughter's face whenever adults use serious voices, the fear that someone else was leaving. Elena must have seen it too because she reached across the table and took Harper's sticky hand. It's good news, sweetheart. I promise. What kind of good news? Harper's voice was small. The kind where I get to stay, Elena said gently. Your dad asked me to move in with you both, to live here, in this house, all the time. Would that be okay with you? Harper's eyes went wide. The syrup bottle clattered onto the table, forgotten. Really? You'd be here every day?
Even on school nights? Every day. I'd be here when you wake up and when you go to sleep and everything in between. Elena squeezed Harper's hand. But only if you want that. This is your home too, and we need you to be comfortable with it. Harper looked at Grant, then back at Elena, her young face serious as she processed this information. Grant held his breath, suddenly terrified that his daughter might say no, might not be ready for this change, might feel like Catherine was being replaced. Then Harper's face split into the biggest smile Grant had seen since before Catherine died. Yes! She launched herself out of her chair and into Elena's arms. Yes, 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 you can have the room next to mine, and we can have breakfast together every day, and you can help me with homework, and we can read stories every night. Elena caught her, laughing and crying at the same time. I'd love all of that. Harper pulled back suddenly, her expression concerned. But what about your house? Where will your stuff go? We'll bring my important things here, my books and clothes and the things I love, and we'll make space for everything. Elena brushed Harper's hair back from her face. We'll do it together, okay? You can help me unpack and decide where things should go. Can I help paint your room? We could do it purple, or maybe blue, or both. Grant laughed, the tension in his chest finally releasing. How about we let Elena decide what color she wants her room? Actually, Elena said, meeting Grant's eyes over Harper's head with a look that made his heart skip. I was hoping I wouldn't need my own room. Understanding dawned on Harper's face. You're going to sleep in Daddy's room, like married people? The question hung in the air. Grant and Elena hadn't discussed that particular detail, and suddenly Grant was acutely aware they should have. But Elena handled it with her characteristic grace. Yes, if that's okay with you. But Harper, that doesn't mean I won't have space for my things. And it doesn't mean you can't come find us if you need us at night. Nothing about that changes. Harper considered this seriously. Mommy used to sleep in Daddy's room. Grant's chest tightened. Here it was, the moment he'd been dreading. The moment Harper would realize that Elena moving in meant someone else sleeping in Catherine's space, using Catherine's closet, living Catherine's life. She did, Elena said quietly. And I'm not trying to replace your mommy, sweetheart. Nobody could ever do that. But your dad and I love each other, and people who love each other like to be close to each other. I know. Harper's voice was matter-of-fact. Mommy told me once that the best part of being married was never having to sleep alone. She said Daddy's snoring kept her awake, but she liked it anyway. Grant laughed despite the tears burning his eyes. I do not snore. You totally do, Elena said, grinning. Harper and I will have to form a support group. Harper giggled, and just like that, the moment passed. She returned to her pancakes, already planning where Elena's books should go and whether they needed more bookshelves, and could they please get a cat now that Elena was moving in. After breakfast, while Harper watched cartoons, Grant pulled Elena onto the back porch. The December morning was cold and crisp, their breath forming clouds in the air. That went better than I expected, Grant said, wrapping his arms around Elena from behind. She leaned back into him. Harper's resilient, and she wants you to be happy. She mentioned Catherine sleeping in my room. I thought that would be harder for her. Children are more adaptable than we give them credit for. Harper knows her mother is gone. She's not trying to preserve everything exactly as it was. She's just trying to hold on to the love. Elena turned in his arms to face him. Are you okay with this? Really? Because we can slow down if you need to. Grant looked through the window at Harper, sprawled on the couch with Mr. Hopscotch, safe and happy. He thought about Catherine, about what she'd told his mother, about how she'd want him to live fully. He thought about the past 6 months, about how Elena had helped both him and Harper learn to trust again, to hope again, to love again. I'm more than okay with this, he said firmly. I want you here. I want us to be a family, the three of us. Elena smiled, but there was something hesitant in her eyes. Grant, I need to tell you something about why I left counseling. He waited, giving her space to continue. I told you I burned out, which is true, but it wasn't just burnout. Elena's voice was quiet. I had a patient, a little girl named Maya, who'd lost both parents in a car accident. I worked with her for 2 years, and she was making such progress. She was starting to laugh again, to trust again. And then her aunt, who'd been caring for her, decided to move across the country.
Maya had to start over with a new therapist, a new school, new everything. She swallowed hard. I fell apart. I couldn't handle seeing her lose another stable relationship. I couldn't keep showing up for children, helping them heal, and then watching them leave. Grant held her tighter. Elena, I'm telling you this because I need you to understand what this means to me. Moving in with you and Harper, becoming part of your family, this isn't casual for me. This is everything I walked away from because I couldn't handle the impermanence. And now I'm choosing permanence. I'm choosing to stay. What changed? Elena looked up at him, her hazel eyes bright with unshed tears. You did. Both of you. You showed me that the risk of loss is worth it. That the fear of goodbye doesn't have to keep us from hello. That love, real, messy, complicated love, is worth fighting for. Grant kissed her then, soft and slow, trying to pour everything he felt into the gesture. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. We're a mess, Elena laughed, wiping her eyes. We're a perfect mess, Grant corrected. Now come on, we have a move to plan. The next 2 weeks were organized chaos. Elena gave notice on her apartment lease, and they spent weekends packing her belongings while Harper helped by trying on all of Elena's scarves and asking questions about every single item. Grant cleared space in his closet, then realized he needed to clear more space, then eventually hired someone to install a custom closet system because Elena had far more clothes than he'd anticipated. You seem so minimalist, he said, staring at the mountain of boxes. I contain multitudes, Elena replied cheerfully, holding up 2 similar-looking black dresses. Besides, you have an entire garage full of old tech equipment you'll never use again, so let's not throw stones. Harper appointed herself the official unpacking supervisor, insisting on examining every box and helping decide where things should go. She claimed several of Elena's scarves as her own, declared one of Elena's bookshelves perfect for her room, and spent an entire afternoon arranging Elena's collection of succulents throughout the house. This one goes in the kitchen window, Harper announced, carefully placing a jade plant. And this one is for the bathroom, and this one is for my room to keep me company. Grant watched his daughter bloom under the attention and activity, watched her invest herself in making Elena feel welcome, and felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't thought possible. Mrs. Walsh, who'd been carefully neutral about the whole arrangement, pulled Grant aside during one of her shifts. She's good for Harper, the older woman said, watching Elena and Harper giggle over something in Harper's room. I wasn't sure at first, seemed too fast, too soon. But that little girl hasn't been this happy in 3 years. She's laughing again, really laughing. I know. And you. Mrs. Walsh studied him. You're different too, lighter, like you're finally letting yourself live instead of just surviving. Elena has that effect. Mrs. Catherine would approve, I think. She always said life was too short for half measures. Mrs. Walsh smiled. I'm happy for you, Mr. Matthews, for all of you. The day Elena officially moved in was a Saturday in mid-December, unseasonably warm and bright. The moving truck arrived at 9, and by noon, most of Elena's furniture had been arranged throughout the house. Her desk in the study, her armchair by the living room window, her nightstands on either side of Grant's bed. Harper insisted on making a welcome home banner that they hung across the entryway, decorated with glitter and drawings of the 3 of them holding hands. Elena cried when she saw it, pulling Harper into a fierce hug. This is the most beautiful banner I've ever seen, she said. Thank you, sweetheart. It's so you know you belong here, Harper explained seriously. With us, forever. That evening, after the movers had gone and most of the boxes were unpacked, they ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of a life being rebuilt. Harper insisted on taking a family photo to commemorate the occasion, and they crowded together on the couch while she held Grant's phone at arm's length. Say family, Harper commanded. Family, they chorused, and the camera clicked. Later, Grant looked at the photo, the 3 of them squished together, all slightly out of focus, Harper's thumb partially covering the lens, all of them grinning like idiots. It was imperfect and chaotic and absolutely perfect. He set it as his phone's background. That night, after Harper was asleep, Grant and Elena stood in their bedroom now, surrounded by boxes that still needed unpacking. Elena's clothes hung in the closet next to his. Her books lined the shelves. Her alarm clock sat on the nightstand where Catherine's had once been. "Having second thoughts?" Elena asked quietly, watching him look around the changed space. "No, just noticing how different it is. How different everything is." Grant moved to stand beside her. "Catherine's things are still in the attic. Her wedding dress, her favorite books, the things I couldn't bear to give away. Is that weird? That I kept them?" "Not at all. She's Harper's mother. Those things belong to Harper someday when she's ready for them." Elena took his hand. "Grant, we can still honor Catherine's memory while building our own life. They're not mutually exclusive. I keep waiting for the guilt to come, for the feeling that I'm betraying her by being happy with you. And it's not coming. I thought it would, but instead I just feel grateful. Grateful I got to love Catherine, grateful she gave me Harper, and grateful that I'm getting a second chance at happiness with you." Grant turned to face Elena fully. "Is that wrong?" "No, it's perfectly right." Elena cupped his face with both hands. "Grant Matthews, you are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to love again. You're allowed to move forward. Catherine would want that. Harper needs that. And you deserve it." Grant kissed her, slow and deep, trying to convey everything he couldn't quite put into words. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." They stood there in the quiet of their shared bedroom in the house that was becoming theirs, and for the first time in 3 years, Grant felt completely at peace. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a blur of activity and adjustment. Elena and Harper established morning routines, making breakfast together while Grant showered, Elena braiding Harper's hair for school, all three of them sitting down for coffee and juice before the day began. Evenings fell into patterns too. Homework at the kitchen table while Elena made dinner and Grant caught up on work emails, family meals where they actually talked and laughed, bedtime stories that sometimes included all three of them squished into Harper's twin bed. There were adjustments, of course. Elena discovered that Grant was pathologically incapable of putting the milk back in the right spot in the refrigerator. Grant learned that Elena needed complete silence in the mornings until she'd had her first cup of coffee. They had their first real argument about whose turn it was to take out the trash, which ended with both of them laughing at the absurdity of fighting about garbage when everything else was so good. Harper thrived with Elena in the house. Her teacher called to say Harper was more focused in class, more willing to participate, smiling more. Sophie's mother mentioned that Harper talked about Elena constantly, clearly delighted to have 2 grown-ups who love me now instead of just one. But there were difficult moments too. One night, Harper woke up crying from a nightmare about Catherine. Grant rushed to her room, but Elena was already there, sitting on the edge of Harper's bed, holding her. "I dreamed Mommy came back," Harper sobbed. "But she was mad that Elena was here. She said I forgot about her." Grant's heart clenched, but Elena handled it with quiet grace. "Harper, your mommy could never be mad at you, and you haven't forgotten her. She's in your heart, and in your memories, and in all the ways you're brave and kind and wonderful." Elena smoothed Harper's hair back. "Your mommy loved you so much, and wherever she is now, she's happy that you're happy. She's glad you have people who love you and take care of you." "How do you know?" "Because that's what mothers do. They want their children to be loved and safe and happy. And you are all of those things." Harper hiccuped, wiping her eyes. "Can I have both? Can I love Mommy and love you?" "Oh, sweetheart." Elena pulled Harper into her arms. "You can absolutely have both. Love doesn't run out. You have enough love in your heart for your mommy and for me and for your daddy and for everyone who matters to you." Grant watched from the doorway, tears streaming down his face as Elena rocked his daughter and whispered reassurances. When Harper finally fell back asleep, Elena tucked her in and joined Grant in the hallway. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "I should have woken you first." "No, you did exactly what Harper needed." Grant pulled her close. "Thank you." "For what?" "For understanding, for not being threatened by Catherine's memory, for helping Harper know she doesn't have to choose." Elena looked up at him in the dim hallway. Grant, I meant what I said. Love doesn't run out. Harper can love her mother's memory and still have room to love me, just like you can honor Catherine and still build a future with me. There's no competition, no hierarchy. There's just love. Grant kissed her forehead, overwhelmed by gratitude for this woman who'd entered their lives and somehow made everything make sense. Christmas approached with Harper's excitement reaching fever pitch. She insisted on getting Elena a special present, something that shows she's really family now. After much deliberation and 3 trips to different stores, Harper settled on a silver bracelet with 3 charms, one for each of them. See? Harper explained to Grant as he paid. This heart is for me because I have lots of love. This star is for you because you're the smartest daddy. And this flower is for Elena because she makes everything grow again. The metaphor hit Grant like a punch. Out of the mouths of babes, he thought. His 6-year-old daughter had somehow articulated exactly what Elena had done, helped their frozen, grief-stricken lives grow and bloom again. Christmas morning arrived with Harper bursting into their bedroom at 6 a.m., bouncing on the bed and demanding they open presents immediately. Harper, it's still dark outside, Grant groaned, but he was smiling. That's because the sun knows it's present time. Harper grabbed Elena's hand. Come on, come on! They stumbled downstairs, Grant making coffee, while Harper vibrated with anticipation in the living room. The tree they'd decorated together glowed with lights, presents piled beneath it. A mountain of carefully wrapped gifts that represented the first Matthews family Christmas in 3 years that felt like a celebration rather than a funeral. Harper insisted Elena open her gift first. When Elena unwrapped the bracelet and read the card explaining each charm, she burst into tears. Harper, this is the most beautiful gift I've ever received. Elena fastened the bracelet around her wrist, then pulled Harper into her lap. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll treasure it forever. Do you like it? Really? I love it. Just like I love you. Grant watched them together, his heart so full it ached. He pulled out his phone and took a picture. Elena and Harper cuddled on the couch, morning light streaming through the windows, the Christmas tree glowing behind them, both their faces alight with joy. After presents were opened and breakfast was consumed, Harper played with her new toys while Grant and Elena cleaned up the wrapping paper debris. In the kitchen, Grant caught Elena's hand and pulled her close. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being here. For loving us. For making Christmas feel like Christmas again instead of just another day to survive. Elena smiled up at him. Grant, I should be thanking you. A year ago, I was spending Christmas alone in my apartment, convinced I'd never have a family. And now I have you and Harper and your parents and this whole beautiful life. You gave me that. We gave it to each other. They stood in the kitchen, holding each other, while Harper's laughter drifted from the living room, and Grant thought about how far they'd come. 6 months ago, he'd hired a stranger to accompany him to a gala. Now that stranger was his partner, his love, part of his family in every way that mattered. That evening, after Harper had been put to bed exhausted and happy, Grant led Elena back to the living room. A single present remained under the tree, small, wrapped in silver paper. You missed one, he said, handing it to her. Elena looked confused. But we already opened everything. Open it. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a velvet box. When she opened it, her breath caught. Inside was a ring, not an engagement ring, but a simple white gold band with 3 small diamonds. Grant, what? It's a promise ring, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I know it's too soon for engagement. We've only been together 6 months, and you just moved in, and I don't want to rush anything. But Elena, I need you to know that this is forever for me. You're not a placeholder. You're not a rebound. You're the woman I want to build a life with, the woman I want to grow old with, the woman I want by my side for whatever comes next. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Grant, I love you. Harper loves you. And when we're both ready, when the time is right, I'm going to ask you to marry me properly. But for now, I just need you to know that you're it for me. You're my future. Elena stared at the ring, then at Grant, tears streaming down her face. You're serious? Completely. Grant Matthews, I love you so much. She held out her right hand. Put it on. He slid the ring onto her finger, his own hands shaking slightly. It fit perfectly, the 3 diamonds catching the Christmas lights. 3 diamonds, Elena said softly, understanding. 1 for each of us. 1 for each of us, Grant confirmed. You, me, and Harper. A family. Elena launched herself into his arms, kissing him through her tears. Yes. Yes to all of it. Yes to forever. They held each other in the glow of the Christmas tree, the house quiet around them, and Grant felt something click into place. This was home. This was family. This was the life he was meant to have. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and precious in its own right. Upstairs, a small voice called out, "Daddy? Elena! I can't sleep!" They broke apart, laughing. "Duty calls," Elena said, wiping her eyes. They went upstairs together, both climbing into Harper's bed to settle her back down. Harper snuggled between them, her small body warm and trusting. "This was the best Christmas ever," Harper murmured sleepily. "We're all together." "We are, Harper Bear," Grant said, his arm around both his daughter and the woman he loved. "We're all together." "Forever?" Harper asked, her voice already fading toward sleep. Grant looked at Elena over Harper's head. She smiled at him, the promise ring glinting on her finger. "Forever," they said together. Harper's breathing deepened into sleep, but Grant and Elena stayed, holding their little girl between them, reluctant to break the perfect moment. Finally, Elena spoke softly. "Grant, can I tell you something?" "Always." "I used to think that helping people heal meant never getting too attached, that professional distance was the only way to survive doing this work. But you and Harper taught me something different. You taught me that sometimes healing isn't about distance, it's about presence. It's about showing up and staying and letting yourself be changed by the people you're helping. You changed us too," Grant said quietly. "Before you, we were just surviving, existing, going through the motions. You reminded us how to live." "No." Elena's voice was firm but gentle. "You were already learning how to live again. I just showed up at the right time. You and Harper did the hard work of healing. I just got to be part of the journey." Grant thought about that, about the 3 years of grief, the slow crawl back to functionality, the gradual acceptance that Catherine was gone. Elena was right. The healing had started before she arrived, but she'd accelerated it, deepened it, made it real in ways he couldn't have achieved alone. "We needed you," he said finally. "Both of us. We still need you. And I need you, both of you." Elena carefully extracted herself from Harper's bed, gesturing for Grant to follow. In the hallway, she took his hand. "Grant, I want you to know something. I'm not just here because you and Harper need me. I'm here because you both make me happier than I've ever been. You give my life purpose and meaning and joy. So this isn't just me saving you. You're saving me too." Grant pulled her close, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling the solid reality of her in his arms. "We saved each other." "Yes," Elena whispered against his chest. "We did." They stood in the hallway of Grant's house, their house now, holding each other in the quiet darkness, and Grant felt the last pieces of his grief transform into something softer. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but integrated. Catherine would always be part of his story, part of Harper's story, part of who they were. But Elena was part of their present and their future, and there was room for all of it. The weeks after Christmas unfolded with a gentle rhythm. Elena's presence in the house went from novelty to normal. Her belongings integrated so thoroughly that Grant sometimes forgot she hadn't always been there. They fell into deeper patterns: Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday night movie marathons, Saturday farmers market trips with Harper skipping between them. January brought Harper's 7th birthday, and they threw a party that filled the house with children and chaos and laughter. Harper insisted on introducing Elena to every single friend as "my dad's girlfriend who lives with us and is basically family." Sophie's mother, Jennifer, cornered Elena in the kitchen while they were slicing birthday cake. "You're good for them," Jennifer said directly. "I've known Grant since Harper started school, and I've never seen him like this. Present, happy, actually living instead of just surviving." "He's good for me too," Elena replied honestly. "They both are." Harper told Sophie she has 2 people who love her now,
That's a gift, Elena. Don't underestimate what you've done for that little girl. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I love her like she's mine. I know you do. Anyone can see it. Jennifer squeezed Elena's shoulder. I just wanted you to know what a difference you've made.
That night, after the party guests had gone home and Harper had crashed into bed sugar, exhausted, and happy, Grant found Elena on the back porch. She'd wrapped herself in a blanket against the January cold, staring at the dark garden. You okay? He asked, joining her. More than okay. Just processing. Elena leaned into him. Jennifer said something today about how I've made a difference for Harper. And it hit me that this is what I left counseling to find, the ability to make a lasting impact instead of always saying goodbye. You found it. I did. With you and Harper, I found exactly what I needed. She looked up at him. I never told you the real reason I took that first gala job with you. Grant waited, curious. I'd had a bad week. 3 clients canceled because they were moving or switching therapists, and I felt like I was just a temporary stop for everyone, like I was helping people heal only to watch them leave. And then your request came through, and something about it felt different, like maybe just showing up for one evening and helping someone get through a hard night would be enough. Elena laughed softly. I had no idea it would turn into this. Neither did I. Grant kissed the top of her head. I thought I was hiring someone for one night. Instead, I found the woman who would help me remember how to live. We found each other, Elena corrected, at exactly the right time. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their breath form clouds in the cold air. Finally, Grant spoke again. When do you think we should tell Harper about the promise ring? When you're ready to explain what it means. That it's a promise of forever, even if we're not engaged yet. She'll probably ask when we're getting married. Probably, Elena agreed. What will you say? Grant considered the question seriously. That we're taking our time to make sure we do everything right. That we want to enjoy building our life together before we make it official. That marriage is about more than a ceremony. It's about the everyday choice to show up for each other. That's a good answer, Elena smiled, very mature and thoughtful. I have my moments. You do. She shifted to face him more fully. Grant, I want you to know that I don't need a wedding to feel committed to you and Harper. This, what we have right now, this is enough, more than enough. But you'd say yes. Eventually? When I ask properly? Elena's smile was radiant even in the darkness. Yes, Grant Matthews, when you ask me properly, whenever that is, my answer will be yes. Spring arrived gradually, Seattle's gray winter giving way to cherry blossoms and longer days. Harper's nightmares about losing her father became less frequent, her mentions of Catherine more nostalgic than painful. She started calling Elena by her first name naturally, no longer needing any qualifier or explanation for who Elena was in their lives. One Saturday in April, Harper came downstairs with a serious expression and a piece of paper clutched in her hand. I made something, she announced, climbing onto the couch between Grant and Elena. At school, for art class. We had to draw our family. Grant felt his chest tighten, remembering Harper's art show the previous fall, the way she'd included Catherine in her family portrait. Harper unfolded the paper, revealing a crayon drawing of 4 figures. This is me, Harper said, pointing to the smallest figure. And this is Daddy, and this is Elena, and this is Mommy. The 4th figure was drawn in lighter colors, almost translucent, floating slightly above the other 3. Catherine, present but not solid, part of the family, but in a different way. My teacher asked if I made a mistake, Harper continued, her voice matter-of-fact. She said Mommy isn't here anymore, so she shouldn't be in a family picture. But I told her Mommy is still part of our family, even if she's not here the same way. Was I wrong? Grant couldn't speak around the lump in his throat, but Elena took Harper's hand gently. You weren't wrong at all, sweetheart. Your Mommy will always be part of your family. She's in your heart and your memories, and in all the ways you're brave and kind like she was. Elena pointed to the drawing. This is beautiful and honest and true. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Harper nodded, satisfied. Then she pointed to the 3 solid figures. But you're here now, Elena, with me and Daddy, here for real, not just in memories. I am, Elena confirmed,
I'm here for real, for always. Good. Harper folded her drawing carefully. I'm going to put this on the fridge so everyone knows what our family looks like. She skipped off to do just that, leaving Grant and Elena alone on the couch. Grant finally found his voice. She's okay, he said, wonder in his tone. She's really okay. She's figured out how to hold both, Catherine's memory and your presence, without conflict. Children are wiser than adults sometimes. They don't force things into either or categories. They can live with both and. Elena took his hand. We should learn from her. That evening, Marcus and Jennifer came for dinner with their kids. It had become a monthly tradition, these family dinners where the children ran wild and the adults caught up over wine and good food. After the meal, while the kids played in the yard and Jennifer helped Elena with dishes, Marcus pulled Grant onto the deck. I've been meaning to tell you something, Marcus said, leaning against the railing. The board met last week. They wanted me to sound you out about something. Grant tensed. What? They're impressed with how you've been handling everything. The company's thriving, you're present and engaged. The Foundation Gala was the most successful in years despite you leaving early. Marcus smiled. They wanted me to tell you that they're proud of you, not just as a CEO, but as a person. The way you've rebuilt your life, the way you're raising Harper, the way you've integrated Elena into everything. It shows character. They discussed my personal life in a board meeting? They discussed how your personal stability has positively impacted the company. Grant, 3 years ago, you were barely functioning. You were making decisions from a place of grief and exhaustion. Now you're making them from a place of clarity and strength. That matters. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Catherine would be proud of you too, you know, of everything you've become. Grant blinked back tears. You think so? I know so. She loved you, man. And she'd be thrilled to see you happy again, to see Harper thriving, to see you building a new life with someone who clearly adores you both. Through the window, Grant could see Elena laughing at something Jennifer said, her face bright with joy. In the yard, Harper was showing the other kids how to catch fireflies in the gathering dusk, her voice high and happy. This life, this moment, this family, it was everything he'd thought he'd lost forever. I'm going to ask her to marry me, Grant said suddenly. Properly. Soon. Marcus grinned. About damn time. What are you waiting for? The right moment, I guess. Something meaningful. Grant, every moment with her is meaningful. Stop overthinking it and just ask the woman. That night, after their friends had gone home and Harper was asleep, Grant and Elena sat on their back porch in their usual spots. The promise ring glinted on Elena's finger in the moonlight, and Grant felt a certainty settle over him. Elena? Do you remember the night we met at that coffee shop downtown? Elena smiled. Of course. You looked terrified. I was. I thought I was hiring someone for one evening, and the whole thing felt wrong and desperate. Grant took her hand. But then you asked me what I needed, and something about the way you listened made me tell you everything. About Harper, about Catherine, about how lonely I was. And you didn't run. Why would I run? Because I was a mess. A grieving widower hiring a companion for a gala because he couldn't face his colleagues' pity. Not exactly an attractive prospect. You were honest, Elena said softly. You were vulnerable and real, and trying your best to survive impossible circumstances. That's not a mess, Grant. That's human. That night, when we left the gala early because Harper was crying, you came with me. You didn't have to, but you did. And you sat on her bedroom floor in that beautiful gown and told her stories until she felt safe again. Grant's voice thickened. That's when I knew. That's when I knew you were someone special, someone who saw beyond the job to the people who needed her. Grant, where's this going? He stood, pulling her up with him. The promise ring caught the light, 3 diamonds winking. I gave you this ring at Christmas and said it was too soon for engagement, that we needed time to build our life together first. We did need that. We still might need more. Elena Brooks. Grant cut her off gently, reaching into his pocket. We've lived together for 5 months. We've navigated Harper's grief and my fears and built something beautiful together. We've had our first fight and our first Christmas and countless ordinary days that felt extraordinary because we were together, and I don't want to wait anymore. He pulled out a small velvet box, different from the one at Christmas.
and opened it to reveal a simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond. This was Catherine's engagement ring, he said quietly, and Elena's breath caught. Before you say anything, let me explain. When Catherine died, I put this ring in a drawer because I couldn't look at it. But a few months ago, I took it out and really examined it. And I realized something. This ring isn't about Catherine. It's about love. It's about commitment. It's about choosing to build a life with someone despite all the risks and fears and uncertainties. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Grant, Catherine wore this ring as a promise that we'd face life together. And now I want to give it to you as a promise that we'll face life together. Not as a replacement, not as a do-over, but as a new beginning. Grant took Elena's left hand, the one that didn't wear the promise ring.
Elena Brooks, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Harper's stepmother and part of this family forever? Elena was crying openly now, her hands shaking in his. Are you sure? Grant, this was Catherine's ring. Are you absolutely sure you want... I've never been more sure of anything. Catherine would approve. She'd want this ring to represent love and commitment, not sit in a drawer gathering dust. And Elena, I love you. I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. So please, say yes. Yes. Elena laughed through her tears. Yes, Grant Matthews, I will marry you. I will love you and Harper for the rest of my life. Yes. Grant slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, settling next to the promise ring as if it had always belonged there. He pulled Elena into his arms, kissing her with all the love and relief and joy he felt, and she kissed him back with equal passion. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying, a small voice spoke from behind them. Does this mean Elena is going to be my real mom now? They whirled to find Harper standing in the doorway in her pajamas, Mr. Hopscotch clutched in her arms, her eyes wide and hopeful. Harper, what are you doing up? Grant asked, his heart racing. I heard talking. I wanted to see. Harper looked at Elena's hand, at the ring glinting there, and her face split into a huge smile. You're getting married. Elena knelt down to Harper's level. Is that okay with you, sweetheart? Your dad asked me to marry him, and I said yes, but only if you're okay with it. Harper launched herself at Elena, wrapping her arms around her neck. Yes, I'm okay with it. I want you to be my mom. Elena held her tight, crying again. I can't replace your mommy, Harper. Nobody can. But I can love you with all my heart, and I can be here for you always, and I can be another mom for you if that's what you want. Harper pulled back to look at her seriously. Can I call you Mom, or would that make Mommy sad? Grant knelt beside them, his own eyes burning. Harper Bear, having two moms doesn't diminish either of them. You can call Elena Mom and still call your mommy Mommy in your memories. Love doesn't divide, it multiplies. Like how I love both chocolate and vanilla ice cream? Elena laughed wetly. Exactly like that. Harper nodded, satisfied with this explanation. Then yes, I want Elena to be my mom, my other mom, my here, right now mom. The three of them huddled together on the back porch, holding each other and crying happy tears, and Grant felt his heart finally heal completely. Not by erasing Catherine, but by making room for Elena alongside her. Both loves, both women, both essential to making him who he was. So when's the wedding? Harper asked practically, pulling back. Can I be the flower girl? Can we have cake? Can I help pick out your dress, Elena? Grant and Elena looked at each other and burst out laughing. How about we figure all that out tomorrow? Grant suggested. Right now, it's way past your bedtime, young lady. But Daddy, we're celebrating. We can celebrate in the morning with pancakes, Elena promised. Special celebration pancakes with extra chocolate chips. That seemed acceptable to Harper. They all went upstairs together, tucking Harper into bed for the second time that night. She insisted on examining Elena's ring one more time, holding her finger up to the light. It's pretty, Harper pronounced. Mommy had good taste. She did, Elena agreed softly. In rings and in the family she built with your dad. Harper nodded, then snuggled under her covers. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Mom. The word hung in the air, simple, profound, perfect. Elena's breath caught, and Grant saw tears stream down her face again, but she smiled through them. Good night, sweetheart, Elena whispered. I love you. Love you too.
In their own room, Grant and Elena collapsed onto the bed, emotionally exhausted and happier than either of them had ever been. That just happened, Elena said, staring at the ceiling. You proposed, with Catherine's ring, and Harper called me Mom. Any regrets? Grant asked, only half joking. Elena turned to look at him, her eyes fierce. Not a single one. Grant, this is everything I never knew I wanted. A family, a home, a partner who challenges me and loves me and makes me want to be better. You and Harper are my whole world. Grant pulled her close, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling the solid reality of her in his arms. We're the lucky ones. Both of us. Harper and I were drowning, and you threw us a lifeline. You taught us how to live again. We taught each other, Elena corrected. You taught me that it's okay to stay, to put down roots, to let myself be part of something permanent. Before you and Harper, I was so afraid of loss that I never let myself really connect with anyone. You showed me that love is worth the risk. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. Finally, Grant spoke again. We should probably talk about the actual wedding. When, where, how big? Small, Elena said immediately. Just family and close friends, nothing elaborate. I don't need a big production. I just need you and Harper and the people we love. Sounds perfect. Grant kissed her forehead. Whatever you want, we'll make it happen. What I want is already happening. This, us, this family we've built. Elena traced patterns on his chest. The wedding is just paperwork. The real commitment is what we're living every day. Still, Harper's going to want to be involved in the planning. Elena laughed. Oh, God, yes. She's going to have opinions about everything. Are you ready for that? For officially becoming Harper's stepmother? For all the school events and dance recitals and teenage drama that's coming? Grant, I'm already Harper's stepmother in every way that matters. The legal paperwork is just a formality. Elena propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. I'm ready for all of it. The mundane and the extraordinary. The easy days and the hard ones. I'm choosing this life with you both, completely and forever. Grant cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to be yourself. A good man trying his best to raise his daughter and honor his late wife's memory while learning how to live again. That was enough. You were always enough. They made love that night with a tenderness that spoke of promises and futures, of grief transformed into hope, of two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Elena's head on Grant's chest, both of them too happy to sleep. Can I tell you something? Elena murmured into the darkness. Always. I used to think my life's purpose was to help children heal from trauma. That's why I became a counselor, why I threw myself into that work so completely. But now I think my purpose was always to find you and Harper, to be part of this family. Everything else was just preparation. Grant's arms tightened around her. I used to think my life ended when Catherine died, that I'd had my chance at happiness and lost it, and the rest was just endurance. But you showed me that life doesn't end with loss. It just changes. And sometimes those changes, as painful as they are, lead us to exactly where we're meant to be. Where are we meant to be? Right here. Together. The three of us. Elena lifted her head to kiss him softly. Right here, she agreed. Together. They finally fell asleep wrapped in each other, the engagement ring glinting on Elena's finger, the promise ring beside it, both symbols of a love that was new and precious and built on the foundation of grief transformed into hope. The next morning, Harper burst into their room at dawn, launching herself onto the bed between them. Is it still true? She demanded. Are you really getting married? It's still true, Grant confirmed, pulling his daughter into a hug. Elena and I are getting married. And I can call her Mom? Elena brushed Harper's hair back from her face. You can call me whatever feels right to you, sweetheart. Mom, Elena, whatever you're comfortable with. Harper considered this seriously. I think I want to call you Mom, because you're here with me every day and you help with my homework and you read me stories and you love me. That's what moms do. Then Mom it is, Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. Harper threw her arms around both of them, and they lay there, the three of them, watching morning light filter through the windows of their home, beginning the first day of their forever. 3 months later, on a perfect September afternoon, Elena and Grant stood in the backyard of Grant's parents' home in Bellevue, surrounded by everyone they loved. The ceremony was small and intimate, just family and closest friends, held under the old oak tree where Catherine used to climb as a child. Harper stood beside Elena as the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd chosen herself, holding a basket of rose petals. She'd insisted on one modification to the traditional ceremony, a moment where they all three held hands while the officiant spoke about the family they were creating together. Today we celebrate not just the union of Grant and Elena, the officiant said, but the creation of a new family. A family built on love, on choice, on the courage to embrace joy after loss. Grant, Elena, and Harper, may you continue to choose each other, support each other, and love each other through whatever life brings. When it came time for vows, Elena spoke first, her voice clear and strong despite the tears in her eyes. Grant, when I met you, you were trying so hard to survive that you'd forgotten how to live. You were protecting your heart so carefully that you'd walled it off from everything, including joy. But you let me in. You trusted me with your grief and your daughter and your wounded heart. And in doing so, you gave me the greatest gift, a family. I promise to honor Catherine's memory, to love Harper as my own, to stand beside you through every challenge, and to remind you every day that you're worthy of happiness. I choose you, Grant Matthews, today and always. A. Grant's hand shook as he held Elena's, his voice rough with emotion. Elena, you walked into my life when I needed saving, and you didn't even know it. You sat on my daughter's bedroom floor and told her stories. You showed up for pizza nights and school events and mundane Tuesday evenings. You didn't try to fix us or change us. You just loved us as we were. You taught me that loving again isn't a betrayal of the past. It's a celebration of the human heart's capacity to heal. I promise to choose you every day, to build a life with you that honors where we've been while embracing where we're going, and to love you and Harper with everything I am. You're my second chance, my miracle, my home. There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. When the officiant pronounced them married and Grant kissed Elena, Harper cheered loudly and everyone laughed through their tears. At the reception, Grant's mother pulled Elena aside. Welcome to the family officially, Susan said, embracing her new daughter-in-law. Catherine would approve, you know. She always said the worst thing about dying would be leaving Grant and Harper alone. I think she'd be grateful you found them. I hope so, Elena said softly. I'm trying to honor her memory while building our future. You're doing it perfectly, dear. The fact that you even care about honoring her memory speaks volumes about your character. During the father-daughter dance, Harper insisted on cutting in halfway through so she could dance with both Grant and Elena, one small hand in each of theirs. They swayed together under the twinkling lights, the three of them, while their friends and family watched with knowing smiles. Are you happy, Harper Bear? Grant asked his daughter. The happiest, Harper said confidently. Because now we're complete, you and me and Mom, a real family. Elena kissed the top of Harper's head, then met Grant's eyes over their daughter's hair. The look that passed between them held everything, grief and joy, loss and love, endings and new beginnings all tangled together into something beautiful and whole. Later, as the party wound down and Harper dozed on a blanket under the stars, Grant and Elena slow danced alone, the last song playing softly. No regrets? Grant murmured against Elena's hair. Not a single one. You? Just one. Elena pulled back to look at him, concerned. What? That I didn't find you sooner. Grant smiled. But then again, maybe we found each other exactly when we were meant to, when we were ready. I think you're right. 6 months earlier, you wouldn't have been ready to let me in, and I wouldn't have been ready to stay. But we're ready now. We are, Elena agreed, resting her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. We're ready for all of it. The life we're building, the family we're creating, whatever comes next. Grant held his wife, and looked over at Harper sleeping peacefully nearby, and felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he was meant to be. This was the family he was meant to have. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and precious in its own right. Catherine would always be part of their story. She'd given him Harper, taught him how to love deeply, and in her final unintentional gift, she'd taught him that he was strong enough to survive loss. But Elena had taught him something equally important, that surviving wasn't enough, that he was allowed to thrive, to laugh, to love again, to embrace joy without guilt. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For staying, for choosing us, for helping me remember what it feels like to be alive." Elena lifted her head and kissed him softly. "Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your heart and your daughter, for building this life with me." The song ended, but they kept swaying, reluctant to break the moment. Around them, the September evening was perfect. Warm breeze, stars beginning to appear, the sound of Harper's soft breathing nearby, their friends and family packing up with quiet laughter. This was home. This was family. This was love. Complicated and hard-won and more beautiful for having survived loss and fear and the courage to try again. Grant Matthews had hired a companion for a gala and found the woman who taught him how to live. Elena Brooks had taken a job thinking it would be one evening and discovered the family she'd always needed. And Harper had been brave enough to let another person love her, to open her wounded heart one more time. They'd all been broken, but together they'd become whole. And in that wholeness, under the stars of a perfect September night, with a sleeping child nearby and a lifetime of tomorrows stretching before them, Grant and Elena held each other and knew with absolute certainty that they'd found exactly what they'd been searching for. Not a fairy tale ending, but something better, a real beginning, a family forged from loss and hope, grief and love, fear and courage. A family that would face whatever came next together, with hands joined and hearts open, choosing each other every single day, forever.